Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Irvington Planning Board meeting of October 8th, 2025. I'd like to, sorry, we're 8 minutes late according to that clock, probably more. We had another engagement prior to this. I'd like to introduce the village representative, Mrs. Sarah Palermo. She's on the gatekeeper for Zoom. Is Ed Marin, building inspector, Doug Hahn, our consultant engineer, Mary Ann Stessage, the village attorney, Elaine Du, the traffic consultant, Lori Davidowitz on board, and McGillicott. I'm Caesar Manfredi, Mike Smith, and Mike Bafuco. The first order would be the minutes of September 3rd, 2025. Mary Ann, we're all set with that?
Yeah, I reviewed them and noted.
Anybody else have any comments on the minutes of September 3rd? Make a motion to approve the minutes of September 3rd, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Okay, the order for this evening is number 1, 17 Willow Street. Number 2 is 5 North Buckout Street, better known as Hudson Prime, the steakhouse on the corner. Number 3 will be 55 Broadway, better known as Mercy University. Number 4 is 76 North Broadway, Bomber or the Maxim Road. Right, number 1, we have 17 Willow Street up, Sarah.
Yep, just so everyone knows, when you talk in the back, you transcribe and overriding when the board or someone at the town speaks. So if you can avoid talking amongst yourselves, if you have to, just go outside.
All right, one other point before we get to that. If anybody looked at the agenda online, 69 Hudson Avenue is on the agenda, but there was issues with the submittal and they're not appearing, right?
Yes, correct.
Getting back to number 1, 17 Willow Street.
Good evening, folks. I'm sorry about this strange red hue. I don't know what to do about that. My name is Douglas McClure. I'm the architect for the Lundys at 17 Willow Street.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second because if you saw the mayor's note about Halloween this year, 15 bands and Main Street being closed. Doug here has a little bit to do with that.
A little bit, yeah. It's all my fault.
So congratulations. All right, go ahead.
Well, I hope everyone has a great time. We're looking forward to it. So I can call the drawings up if you want me to. We received Han's memorandum. There was a new issue of some comments from the landscape architect. We have already addressed those issues as of today. I can tell you that the engineer, let me get to his email here. He added structural root zones. He changed the tree protection and relocated the cul-de-sacs. So we will be submitting those to Ed after this meeting. Do you need me to call up the drawings? Is there anything you...
Just bring up an elevation of what it's going to look like.
Sure.
If anybody here has a thought, you can look at it.
Second here.
I'm glad you moved the cul-de-sacs because that was one of our comments and the term to constructive root zone, that means if you put it there, the tree likely would either die or fall down in the where it was.
Okay, so this is the existing elevations of which we did not include last time. And these are the proposed elevations, which you can see are very similar. We're keeping the same roof lines. We're just extending it to in the back, roughly 6 or 7 feet.
And you understand the variances that are involved here? I think you got
Yes.
every possible variance possible.
Caesar, I do a lot of work in these neighborhoods, and it always seems like I have every variance I have to address.
Got 2 side yards, rear yard, height, coverage,
But
fog.
I've already filled out the ZBA application in hopes that you guys will approve us and move us into their.
It brings up
hands.
the basic question to, I guess, for the trustees to consider. Are the current codes too tight or are the lots too small? Anyway,
This is something you and I have talked about before, but yes, it's an issue in this area and off Main Street.
all right, the view preservation, you satisfied that last time. Anybody else?
Yes.
Anybody on board? Hold on, Doug, I'm just gonna.
Okay.
I have no questions.
I have none. Mike,
No questions.
Mike,
No questions.
Sarah, on the Zoom?
Nobody is raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay. Anybody here physically in the room that wants to comment? No. Any other questions, Doug?
I have none.
Mary Ann, you have a resolution?
Whereas in September 2025, James Lundy Jr. applied for site development plan approval to construct a 2-story addition and renovate his house at 17 Willow Street, which is located in the View Preservation District. And whereas the proposed construction would require variances for coverage, height, FAR, and both side yard setbacks. Han Engineering reviewed the plans and the memorandum dated September 2nd and October 6th listed a number of issues, most of which were addressed. Dan Nolan, the village's landscape consultant, reviewed the plans and made several recommendations, most of which were addressed in a subsequent submission. Whereas the planning board held a public hearing on the application on September 3rd and October 8th, 2025. Proposed improvements would not negatively impact the view of the Hudson River from neighboring properties. It's type 2 action under SEQA and therefore requires no environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved, the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval of the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Lundy Residence prepared by McSee Architecture and the feats are designated. The proposed alterations and additions, 17 Willow Street prepared by Hudson Engineering and Consulting, and structural plans for alterations for 17 Willow Street prepared by Resreal Design. Subject to 1, receiving variances from the zoning board of appeals for height, coverage, FAR, and side yard setbacks, and 2, complying with items in Hans and Nolan's October 8th, 2025 memorandum.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Any questions on the board? Make a motion to approve the resolution as read by Mary Ann.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have
Stay
a
on
great
the ball.
evening.
Stay on the ball for Halloween.
Oh, I always do.
Number 2. It's listed as La Familia, but we all know it as Hudson Prime, and it's at 5 North Buckout Street. Is anybody present in the room that's going to represent them, or is this Zoom?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. David Barbuti representing La Familia, mentioned better known as Prime Steakhouse at 5 North Buckout Street. We're here tonight for one, the legalization of an existing open staircase at the southerly side of the restaurant building, which leads from the main restaurant to the lower patio level. And 2, to construct a new 1-story dining room addition, roughly 22 by 31 feet, which is 684 square feet, at the lower level patio that presently contains a outdoor dining tent enclosure.
Excuse me. You said to construct, isn't it fair?
Well, so that's the tent structure. We're actually looking to do a regular, constructed addition. You know, stud walls, windows, things like that. This is basically it's not so much a tent structure as one would call it as membrane. He actually had 4 posts and I guess he kind of enclosed it. Correct,
Oh.
Mr.?
Can I speak?
Ed,
Before you can propose a new structure, you can't go to the boards and request something until you remove or correct the undocumented features. There's a couple, twice, there's clear sections in our code that says you must legalize before you forward on other projects.
Okay, so
You
then,
need to choose to either legalize the space that's there or remove it. Or if you have another idea, we're willing to listen.
so the other idea would be to, remove it and build a new structure. So you're saying that we need to remove what's presently
I will
there?
send you the code section and you and your attorneys can discuss it.
Okay.
The building is in the historic district. It's not only in the historic district, it's a
Contributing.
contributing building, which any work that you did on such a building without the ARB is not allowed. And what you have done is without the approval of the ARB. In fact, the first thing we would do here is to send you to the ARB. That's where you start when you're in the historic district, altering the face of a building.
So he's going to the ARB for approval of the demolition.
Demolition addition.
As defined in our code.
Demolition, yeah.
Well, demolition includes addition.
That's correct. And our code, yeah, demolition is a broad term.
Demolition in the historic district.
Now, if you like, after you go to the ARB, assuming, well, if you get their approval to do what you may have already done, without tearing it down, we have some questions that you could work on. And we'll just throw the questions out so that when you come back, you'll already know what our questions would be if you come back. We would need a parking study. And is there a parking requirement?
Yeah, you have to provide parking analysis of existing conditions and then show us how you're handling the additional seating. There's approximately 4 car for every 4 spaces. It's called overlap parking.
Well, there's about 100,
2455.
about 100 seats in the existing restaurant and 46 more in the,
It's the existing seating is existing. Can't regulate that. That was put in before this law was right.
yeah, but the additional 46.
Additional 46 I have to adjust.
You taking notes?
Yes, I am.
We also have a drainage issue. We have village property on the downside of your patio and putting a roof up, but you're covering the area. You need to go through where the drainage is going.
No, understood.
And I drove by there the other day, and that retaining wall looks like railroad ties. Doug, should they do something to,
If you're putting load on it, you need to look at it.
Yeah, we
No,
did
understood.
a comment about that, take a look at it. It was railroad ties or was it? Yeah.
it's covered with vines, so it's.
I
it's hard to
think,
tell.
I think the retaining wall is modular masonry. I think the stairs that we're proposing to reconstruct at the side, at the rear exit that leads to Main Street, those are railroad ties, I think.
All right, well, just take a look at it and verify.
No, understandable.
We're only guessing now then. rather have the structural integrity in place. And we're done with,
Yeah, give me a call in the morning, we can go over, I'll send you the sections of the code in the morning.
Certainly. Just one,
go ahead, you have it, before I ask for comment, you have anything else to say?
I just have just one question, Mr. Marin. Number two on Mr. Hans. The notes that I got this morning, coverage and FAR worksheets to be provided. Isn't that only for single family, multifamily?
Just the numbers.
Just the numbers. Okay, so I could do that on my regular sheet. I don't have to fill out the spreadsheet.
Whatever's easier.
Okay, thank you.
You have any other questions or presentations?
No, I'm good.
Lauren?
Is the restaurant open during the day or just at night?
I am not sure. I believe it's just dinner. I'm not sure if it's open for lunch, but I could definitely find that out.
Well,
and-
no, I'm just asking because of parking. And are they allowed to use the train parking as their
I don't know.
parking?
I don't know when the limitations are on the
Okay. And
on
you're
the MTA parking, if anybody can park there after what time.
at a certain time.
I don't use the train station because I can walk to it.
Okay.
Anything else, Lauren?
No questions. David, I just wanted to make sure that it's, that you understood that for the additional 46 seats, you would need to provide for 12 parking spaces.
No, correct. Understood.
I know.
Mike?
Nothing.
Yes, Mike. Is there anybody sitting in the room that would like to comment on Hudson Prime and their expansion? Sarah, anybody on, oh. Come on up. Microphone, identify yourself.
How are you? My name is Rick Cipher. I've been here
Address.
16A North Buckout Street. Member of the community for about 22 years and had no issues with La Familia. They were good neighbors. I wish I could say the same for Hudson Prime. Anything but. Parking is the least of the concerns. It is a major concern. Where they're gonna find 12 parking spots out of thin air, I have no idea. There is no place to park on that area as it is, with Matheson Park busier than it has ever been, which is a good thing. Post office, multiple cars per family unit on the block as it is. There is no parking. It's strained right now with the amount of folks coming to the restaurant as it is. I'm all for their positive business. That's always a plus. However, on the weekends, late at night, people streaming out, smoking, littering on the street. There has been a number of issues, situations where they've had whatever kind of parties, celebrations on the weekends, where people have been vomiting in the street. All sorts of detritus left after said parties. I've been in that restaurant 3 times, spoken to the owner personally. Neither conversation has been positive. Neither conversation has been respectful, and nothing has been done personally between he and I to alleviate any of my concerns. So as a neighbor, as a resident, I am highly suspicious and not for any kind of expansion of this business. Negative impact on the neighborhood, negative impact on the village. Not to mention the historic district will be negatively impacted also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Ann, do we have a say on the expansion? The 46. Essentially, they're asking for more seats than covered seats.
Well, I mean, if you told them they have to show that they can have the parking, which is a different, issue than what he's raised.
Well, it's one of the issues. that he raised.
Okay,
I
well-
mean,
But we'll talk about this.
so I appreciate your comments. I do think that there are ways to mitigate what you're talking about, including valet parking, right? That could help the situation.
Right.
Okay, so, yeah. So, I mean, I would love to see you and your neighbors come up with a list of grievances that could be shared more publicly, so that we could have the owner of the restaurant answer to those and think about certain stipulations should this go forward. That, I think that could be helpful.
Thank you, Lloyd. That was very good. And
I have no comment. Nothing further.
Nothing from me.
is there anybody else in the room who would like to opine? Sarah, anybody on Zoom?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, I guess you took notes and, the next step is the ARB. Maybe we'll see you when we come back.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask just one question?
We can ask as many questions as you like.
I just have one. So
You know how often is the second and third question after someone says
No,
one?
I just got one, I promise. That's it.
So there's not gonna be any first question though.
So the existing outdoor patio was, I presume, put there for outdoor dining, which is basically the same size as the addition. So if there was at one point outdoor dining that had seating, what's the difference whether it's open or enclosed?
Well, my understanding is the outdoor dining evolved and never approved. Ed, you want to elaborate on that?
I'm gonna answer it with a question. You have documentation to prove that's the case? You use the word assume.
Well, I use presume.
Presume.
Um,
There's no record of, or documentation of an expansion being made for anything other than, waiting.
In other words, a place to sit with a cocktail while you're waiting for a dining table.
Okay, all right, I was unaware of that. Okay, that was my question. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No number
Mr.
two? All
Maron, I will call you tomorrow.
right, anything else?
I'm good.
Okay, well, thank you for your appearance and, good luck with the ARB.
Thank you.
Number 3, 555 Broadway, Mercy University. I have to try hard not to say college.
I know I make the same mistake.
I still say Manhattan College, right? Right, Doug?
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Seth Mandelbaum, author of McCullough, Goldberger, and Stout. I'm pleased to be here once again on behalf of Mercy University. With me, once again, Tom Simmons, the Vice President, Facilities at Mercy, Chris Kamatola, Malloy Design Studios. As you may recall, we were last before this board on July 2nd, after several months of review on our site plan application for proposed field house and parking improvements and other safety and pedestrian circulation improvements. And as you may recall, the field house was relocated further down the hill to the west in response to comments from APOA and some of the neighbors. Last we saw you was right before July 4th and went off to the Zoning Board of Appeals. They granted the necessary variances in one meeting in August. We did resubmit for your September meeting, but we were informed right before the meeting that the board was not in a position to act, so it really made no sense for us to come to that meeting. So we didn't appear in September, and we're here this evening after submitting some additional materials on September 24th. We did receive the Hahn memo dated October 6th, as well as Suzanne Nolan's memo this midday today. Took a look at that, and we believe that we've addressed the majority of those comments, particularly on stormwater and SWIP. And here essentially to ask the board on behalf of a not-for-profit educational institution if you would consider a conditional site plan approval. We can't get a building permit until we've satisfied any outstanding conditions, many of which, as I said, have to do with SWIP. A lot of them are notes on the plans or putting back in a schedule of tree removals, comments of that nature. We did provide the fire truck radius, which we believe Chris can address if necessary. Does show that the fire truck turning radius works, for example, is one of the other substantive comments. As far as the sewer investigation, Chris Tramatola met with Mr. Hahn as well as a representative from the village and spoke to the county. And I think there might be a little bit of a disconnect on kind of where that ended up between the comment and my understanding of Chris, but he could certainly address that. But again, we'd like you to consider, since it is an educational institution, it's not for profit, and if we can't get a building permit until these issues or technical issues are addressed, we'd like you to consider a conditional approval so the university doesn't have to frankly pay for my time and Chris's time coming back again next month and spend that time addressing these comments to the satisfaction of your professionals. So we're throwing ourselves at your mercy, no pun intended. Actually, it was fully intended. To ask if you would consider approving this project subject to those conditions so they can move forward through the design process, construction drawings, bidding, which all takes time. And they would like to get this facility online as soon as possible. And it is a lengthy process, of course, from approval of site plan to a shovel in the ground and actual ribbon cutting and opening for the students and the community.
Some of the items are not insignificant, so starting with the fire truck. And is it resolved?
We haven't sat since, it's got we had a good meeting. Some of the things, needs some cleanup. Turning radius goes over a curb to one of the, to the front of the building. The site plan doesn't match the fire lane plan. So I think there's a lot of coordination that has to get done. I think it's all achievable. I do have a concern, as mentioned in Doug's memo, that these new fire lanes access may be additional coverage, and we need to look at that. Fire lane behind the building doesn't work at all. She's just not telling them what to do, but fire truck, their elevation drawing doesn't match their site plan. And on one of their drawings, the fire truck clips post fire height. We're not sure of the turning radius going in, and we're definitely not sure of the turning radius going out. We sent them a sample of what we're looking for. They didn't send exactly the sample we sent. So we're not sure if the tire path, the overhang of the front, of the cab over fire truck. And they're not small issues, but they're not big issues. They're just a little bit more time. Suggestion is to go offline, and when they get it right, come back. You know, if you're not done for the November meeting, we'll see you in December.
Yeah,
And also the,
And that's just the one issue.
yeah, and it's unclear on
Legal issue, the sewer issue
the sewer.
could be a big issue. We need a study to do that. Take a little time, I don't know. You know, maybe we could talk about it.
The sewer issue is
It's a big concern.
it's the small pumps, the village has a small pump station, largely train station, and it's small. And you indicated that the capacity of that needs to be studied,
So the
not
concern,
so much over the day, but these short bursts
yeah,
of use.
our concern is that although in general use might be acceptable, in a blackout situation, especially if that building gets used in a area of refuge for, you know, storm, we're gonna have trouble with keeping that sewer plant going. There's no generator on it. It's a small pipe and it's a single phase pump. So right now we have about 12 to 14 hours before we have to get a generator down there running. We don't know what that'll do to this. So it's not, it's all achievable. Devil's in the details, and more appropriate at site development plan approval to deal with these. They don't have to come back to the meetings until we've got all that done, if you like. A day like.
And then there's the I&I situation.
INI, there's the Eagle, there's a few other things.
Ionized inflow and infiltration, and there's put new sewage in, you have to take 3 gallons of
Yes.
stormwater out.
Can I address each of these?
Well, let me finish.
Okay.
This is a small point, but the gate on Hudson, we wanted it to be motorized so that, not unmotorized, so that it's not easy to. We don't want to facilitate easy access to, you gotta get out of your, it's something that you have to get out of the car. We don't want
The
to,
landscape plan shows it. Motorized.
that's simple enough to fix. I mean, it'll look better than the little horse that's there.
Right, that was.
You don't have to
showed
feed
the
it,
same one as the other location.
But we don't want to facilitate extra use down the road. Residents wouldn't like that, and it's not appropriate. So if it's motorized and somebody pushes a button, somebody's gonna use that gate. They have to get out of the car. The Eagles,
Yes, we have not heard back from DEC yet despite follow-up, but I indicated to the village attorney we would comply with if a permit is required, which we've asked them to say the permit is not required. We do not believe it is required. That was our request in July.
I might agree with that, but we need for them to say that.
Understood, but we would accept as a condition that if it is required, we will comply with any conditions. And we propose that construction fencing to minimize noise, despite the distance from the actual nest to the construction, which the majority of which has now moved further away from the nest down the hill. So that's how we propose addressing that, since anybody work for DEC here? They do not move quickly. So we have followed up and we have not gotten a response from them, but
I used to work for these.
oh, but you don't anymore.
In fact, I was the regional director.
On INI, frankly, you know, in my experience in many communities, the municipality usually identifies projects that need to be addressed. And the applicant, to be blunt, writes a check for their proportionate fair share for that work. So certainly we'll work with the village on that. You know, Chris did have a couple of meetings that were referenced. You know, we want to address these issues as quickly as possible. I think, Chris, you thought the fire truck, we provided the sample they asked for, but I'm hearing a lot of other issues. So as soon as that conversation can take place, I think that'll be very
Well,
productive.
it's not just the issue of the fire truck, but the configuration of what maybe becomes accessible may change the coverage issue.
Chris, come on, sorry.
The fire truck
Well,
radii,
excuse me, you gotta identify yourself.
sorry, Chris Tremitola, Alloy Design Studio. The fire truck radii was used directly from what was sent over from that I received from Doug. We used the outermost limits of the 4 corners of the vehicle. Everything, wheel paths and everything else land within that zone. So I can actually put up that
If
image
you want
here
to
that shows.
zoom into the, turn into the front of the building. You see you're turning on just the crossfire.
The
If you zoom in. Right there, yeah. More, more, more. A little more, right there.
So technically it misses it, although this hydrant here.
Let's take a vote. And volunteers don't drive like professionals.
We can show this, we actually used a tighter radius than was needed here, so we can show this, that's
So
fine.
it's demonstration. You demonstrated problem that we need to address it. We're not, look, first draft, had a meeting later than we wanted to have it. Have another meeting, we'll have another meeting after that. If we have to have, we'll get it done. I'd like to see the tire turning radius as well as the cab over, because you're showing the cab over in a few spots. If you go directly across the street from that fire hydrant, over the curb, what appears to be the tire turning radius, if it's going around the turn. Again, I'm not sure because we asked for both, it's just one line.
Can we just talk about the coverage issue for a moment, though? My understanding was this material is pervious, is that correct, Chris?
The coverage did not change at all. We actually reduced by a couple square feet.
Okay, and that's why we asked to show us, because coverage and non-pervious, pervious surfaces, are 2 separate items in the area code. Coverage, definition of coverage is any combination of building material
But you're saying it went down, correct?
Well, it might not.
Correct. So this is a sunken grid system underneath of a,
Oh, it's under? It's the
Underneath.
plastic one that goes under
underneath, yes.
and it holds the operation of a truck?
Yes, that's the specific purpose of it. Yes, we'll do.
Yeah, of course, we don't want to take another trip back to the zoning board as pleasant as they were.
Well, that's why,
No, I think we just need to meet, I don't think the back fire lane works. And I don't think you need it, but that's just
That's the
my
conversation
opinion. It's
that's
not a,
happened. If we talk about the sewer, because I understand the concern, and Chris, I know you had meetings with Mr. Hahn with the village representative. On the county side of things, it sounds like things are okay, correct?
it's how we get
Yes.
it, that's how we get it.
That's how you get to the county, I
How we
understand.
get it into the county.
So I guess what we're struggling to understand, and I appreciate having a few minutes to talk about this, is whose responsibility is it to confirm the capacity of that sewer line? You know, we can't touch your sewer line, without your permission, of course, nor do we have data on it. So we want to kind of understand, and Mr. Hahn, if you're able to opine on that,
Yeah, I
to
mean,
get us sort of over the finish line and confirm.
the
hopefully,
problem
that-
is that there is no historical data available. The village doesn't have any meters on that line going into the county anywhere.
So, client, don't throw anything at me. Who do we write a check to get that done as quickly as possible?
That is something.
Is it some, do you,
Let-
all kidding aside, do you require the applicant's consultant to do that with your permission? Or is there a consultant that the village prefers to work with to do the actual videoing of the line or the other investigation?
We believe it's time and cost prudence for the applicant.
When you say the applicant's consultant.
But your consultant, we will take suggestions and we'll probably be okay with it. We're more concerned. We don't know what it's gonna bring out.
Right, understood.
The I&I, although there's a number at the county that you have to follow, might all be just for that project.
Understood. I've had one very recently, kind of sewer line that goes under I-287. So that was a really fun video. We're relining portions of the line, that dealt with the issue.
We can deal, yeah.
Okay, so just so we're all clear, is the most efficient thing for us to contact Doug's office to facilitate that as soon as possible?
I think so, yeah.
And I assume whatever insurance or whatever, needs to be done, work out there.
Yeah, and our water department is ready to work with you. They're waiting.
Okay, we'd like to get that.
They've identified the manholes already. They've
Oh, great.
graded them. They've cleaned off the tops of them for
Mhm.
both projects.
Okay.
So that there's no struggling to find,
Okay, so,
and they'll probably walk with you. Some of them are on private property.
right, we want to
We'll work on
be
it.
respectful of the process on that and get it done as quickly as we can.
just for clarity, I heard the word village and county. Is this going to the county pump station or to the village pump station?
This goes directly to our pump station, which pumps into the county.
Well, I know it pumps it,
And so we're worried about how it gets out of that pump. Once it's gravity, I think it's good, it's a big line.
Okay.
We just want to
It's
flow
just the
test.
village pump station, that is the issue.
The village pump station is the concern. And it's not right on the county line, it's far off.
I have to assume the county pump station is more than that.
We're not worried about the county pump station.
And since we're all here together, are there any other, I'll call them major issues that were not identified that you would like us to
We're going
address
to,
before we come back?
hold the board and
Okay.
and the audience.
Fair enough, thank you. Sure, Tom Simmons.
Hi, Tom Simmons from Mercy University. Thanks for your time. I just would like you to consider that as this project has evolved, there's really two pieces. In my mind, the building and the site work down on the bottom where we're talking about the fire truck, the sanitary, the sewer, all those things. And then there's the upper parking lot in that area. So my approach on this project is to phase that as I implement it. I need to build a new parking lot so I can move that parking to where it is, so I can take that area offline to build the building and to bid that and get the steel ordered and the frame for the structure. So if you would consider what I said to Seth earlier is I need to, I can appreciate all the comments, and as Seth alluded to, I'm a little disappointed, and probably as you are, these months are passing with back and forth opinions on whether comments have been answered. But I'd ask you to consider whether I can advance in good faith of bidding the upper parking lot And of course, we know you have final control on the permit for us to do the work, but I don't see any comments addressing the upper area at all. And I need to get moving on this if I'm gonna hit the milestones I need to do to be able to sequence this, certain parts when college isn't in session.
We don't like to segment projects, but on rare occasions, we can accommodate that, but we're not prepared to do that tonight. We don't have a resolution. If we had suggested that before, we may have been able to accommodate that. We have done that. So a certain part can move forward while the rest. And since you mentioned other questions on the parking lot, which was out of my head, I do have a question here on the parking lot, and I'll ask Doug, the drainage on the parking lot.
I was gonna say the stormwater, I wouldn't call it insignificant. I mean, great soil, so the comments can be addressed, but the tributary areas are, nothing goes really by the design manual, so.
Can I make a suggestion, Susan?
Go right ahead.
Your next submission, why don't you bring in that proposal next month if you can't get past all the other hurdles?
Yes, I said next, we certainly can do the park, but you gotta figure out the drainage on the parking lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you feel that you got just that part done, why don't you bring just that part out of discussion?
Yeah.
Although the Eagle Nest is still gonna be your biggest hurdle.
Well, the Eagle Nest is-
The Eagle Nest is gonna be the biggest hurdle on the parking lot. believe it or
It's
not,
parking lot.
'cause that's the closest to the.
And then lastly, the gate that you had asked for, I told the designer to match what we had done on Landing Drive. It is motorized, and that was something the fire department on the Dobbs Ferry side required after it was unmotorized. So I just want to make sure that you're being clear with your municipal people that you don't want to motorize, because I had to make it motorized to meet their fire approval. So just consider
I'll
that.
double check with them, but the last, it came up in our last conversation.
They wanted a remote to open it without coming out of the truck to respond to a thing. That's what the whole motorized is for.
They have to get out of the truck now unless they want to run over the horse.
Well, yeah, so just consider that when you're thinking about the best way.
I think that concern is more about the abuse that it might take if it's motorized by other staff that doesn't know better.
Well, whichever you'd like, but it's gonna look good and you can decide whether it's motorized.
Thanks, Tom.
Oh, any questions, Lori?
No, I think you made a good point. I also want to make sure that everything you're asking is clear and that you're getting answers and that our village staff is working appropriately with you to continuously move it forward so that you don't lose precious time.
Yeah, pretty much I share the same sentiment as Lori. Obviously, it's very detailed, a lot of issues here and there, but, once we get the ball rolling, it seemingly will be a good project.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of very productive conversations. Clearly, we need to have a few more and keep this moving.
Absolutely.
Some, if you ever look at, there are some parking lots, namely Greenberg Town parking. You have these planters in the parking lot. Greenberg has them also. They incorporate those planters as part of the stormwater plan. Meaning rain gardens.
We have those, but not.
Anyway, it's something to think about.
We've actually implemented that since hearing the comment from the last meeting.
Oh, okay.
So those islands on the, it's a little hard to explain without the plan, but on the side that the stormwater is running to, the joints of the curb are open, so there's no mortar between the curb stones, which allows stormwater to run through there. It acts as a rain garden, as you were mentioning.
The downside of that is it gets real cold for prolonged, it freezes, and then those little rain gardens are frozen, so you have to accommodate where it might go if it's.
We did not actually adjust any of the stormwater rechargers or sizing
Oh, okay.
volume, and there are still grates in the parking lot itself. We are not assuming all of the water is going in there. It's only a portion of it the joint width is designed to only take a small amount of water.
Thank you. Mike,
Nothing from me.
is there anybody sitting in the room who would desire to comment on the Mercy University? Sarah, any Zoom?
Nobody's raising their hands, speaking, there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, anything else over here?
Yes, I got an email from Mary Ann about a week ago regarding EV charging and the village's stretch code, which is, I guess, the building and fire code has a requirement for, very specific, for parking lots that are electrically fed from a building and have more than, I think it's 10 spaces. You have to provide 5% of the spaces with either the conduit for EV charging or the actual EV charging. Now, maybe we can go to that slide. Chris. We sort of have two parking lots, one for the field house itself and one up at the tennis courts where the field house was originally proposed. And we have some areas where this was going to be our, last thing to get it over approval tonight, but that kind of fell apart quickly. But we have a couple of conceptual areas. Chris, maybe you could just describe concepts here for the area by the building?
Area by the building. We are placing, sorry about that. We are proposing to place charging stations here for 2 doubles, so 4 spaces for EV parking here. Those would be conduited to the electrical room that's being supported by the building. And then at the parking up at the top, we would be feeding off of electrical service from the southern portion of campus. So bringing through, as we make this raised table traffic situation, we would bring conduit up from the southern part of campus up here to provide 6 charging stations up within this parking lot.
But the ones up there are not necessarily fed from a building. Right?
Correct. It's just
Those are kind of above and beyond. If you want them, put them up there. And Tom, I think you're looking ahead also.
Yeah, we're okay with that.
Well, right now the code says piping them. I haven't followed the stretch code till January. After January, there's a new building code. I don't know when you're applying for that building permit.
We hope before then.
And I haven't read what the new building code says.
This is an either or, it looks like.
Yeah, it's either or. Yeah.
The capacity and conduit for future installation
Right.
or the actual, right?
Unless you walk into a building permit. January 2nd.
Right.
That's fine.
Let
Where do
me
you
ask
think
you
it works
this.
the best?
Could it be a combination? Because it's an or? It could be conduit for some of them and actual charging for another? But
I
yeah,
don't think they can have a need for it at this time anyway.
this is driven by when we file for the building permit.
Right.
Because it's in the building code, it's not in the zoning code.
That's correct.
I think the new draft code is already out.
It is, I haven't read it. Books are $800. University one one.
I'll let your counsel address whether that would be appropriate. Do we have anything else we want to ask? All right, we have a lot of homework to do. Are there any other questions for us?
I think we're done. Mikey, did you have a question on land use? We're good. Again, make another question. Sarah, anybody on Zoom?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Nobody in the room.
Okay,
The board would, open.
we will see you at your November meeting.
Oh, I should remind you,
Yes,
as you know, we're here on October 8th. So the envelope of time to the deadline is a week shorter.
right. But there are 5 Wednesdays in October. So. All right, we have to drive up to New Paltz, so we're outside DEC's office when they open in the morning. Thank you for your time.
Mile point 76.
Yes.
Next on the agenda is 76 Hudson Avenue.
I don't
No, I'm
think-
sorry. 76 North Broadway. If anybody's interested, it's 1-0 Blue Jays. Okay, Kathy, you're on.
Good evening, Kathy Zelantis from Silverberg Zelantis. For the applicant with me tonight in the room is Peter Gato from the architecture firm, and Rocco Varma for the applicant. And online, if we could have them promoted, are Carlito Holt and Peter Gregory from DTS Providence.
Recording in progress.
So we thought since it's been a while to start with the site plan, because they've been some changes since you saw them last time, to go over them and go through the project. But unless you want to go another way.
I'd like to address traffic first.
Okay.
That's been our thing for the last amount of time. Do you have any, there's been a lot of correspondence on traffic.
Yes, and we should have Carlito on the Zoom. Great, there he is.
Yeah, I'm on.
I thought somebody was missing. Okay. We had an extensive review by Elaine, who I guess we could start with that. And there's correspondence. The traffic consultant, citizen traffic consultant submitted, and there was you went through that, and we there's some questions that were cleared up or not cleared up, and then there's the implementation post implementation, which we could say for the end, because that's going to prompt a lot of conversation. So if you could just address the things that need to be addressed.
So first go point by point through the letter provided by Stephen Maffia. Point number one, as far as I understand it, Mr. Maffia emailed the village, I believe it was yesterday or this afternoon, stating that a portion of item number one has been should be taken out. And I believe that is everything referring to West Orange as well as Paramus, the two other Brookhurst facilities. So in terms of Mr. Matthews' comments, he believes that the trip generation rates for the school are not accurate. However, I want to note that the applicant has provided the trip generation with IT in mind. They calculated it based on the IT trip generation rates, which were more conservative than what they have measured at the West Orange. In addition, what matters more is their analysis, of course, and their analysis as well as their traffic impacts were based more on the actual number of trips generated by the school. So that is, they calculated out the number of students, they assigned one car to each student, and they assigned all of those cars to the road. So as such, it is their trip generation as analyzed is accurate. Item number two is regarding drop-off pickup times as well as the queuing within the parking lot. So I believe DTS Providence can probably talk about this a little more. However, I want to know that they did do an assessment of the drop-off pickup plus also the queuing on site. So they have 9 parking spaces plus 1 accessible parking space on the surface. And so with that in mind, and each pickup drop-off taking 10 minutes, it is enough space. Plus, they have, I believe it's around 300-400 feet for queuing from North Broadway all the way into their site. So that is enough space plus the parking lot to accommodate queuing within their site without affecting Broadway. In addition, a few items in my memo that I wanted the applicant to consider in terms of queuing. Having a staff member outside helping the parents load and unload their students may be helpful. It might help reduce the amount of time that parents are waiting. This staff member can also help with directing traffic and making sure that vehicles are not queuing back to North Broadway. That is, if they notice that folks are taking too long or the queues are getting long, they can help redirect vehicles into the parking garage that's underground. And that way we avoid any queuing on Broadway. The next item on Mr. Matthews' memos has to do with queuing impacts. I'm also going to group this with the level of service impacts. So this is Mr. Matthews commenting that there are impacts that are not mitigated. However, the applicant has demonstrated that they have mitigated each impact. What I want to note is, and this is upon discussion with planning board as well as the village's attorney, the applicant is only responsible for mitigating the impact that they cause. So they only need to mitigate everything back to no build condition. As such, they are meeting all the requirements for the village code for traffic performance.
Let me clarify that if I may. Meeting the criteria in the code, but there's still somewhat of additional delay, but the additional delay is allowed by the code.
Correct. The additional delay is allowed by code, and also what I want to emphasize is a lot of the delay and queuing issues are existing today. So for instance, the left turn, the eastbound left turn lane from Main Street onto Broadway, we understand that's an issue. It backs up pretty far, especially during the school drop-off hours, the school pickup hour in the afternoon. And so that is an issue that is being experienced today, and the applicant would not be responsible for improving that condition because they are not, that is existing, and that's not the problem that they're contributing to. So the next point in Mr. Matthews' memos is regarding the spreading of the peak hours, or as I'd like to call it, the effect of the staggering of students. And so this is something that we've been addressing over the last couple of months. I reviewed the traffic volumes from the applicant in terms of what the traffic is like off peak, as well as the number of trips that they're shifting off peak. The applicant also went ahead and did a full analysis of the off peak hour and determined that the mitigation measures proposed for the peak hour will work for the off peak hour for the same reasons. The next item has to do with inconsistent trip distribution at Broadway and Main Street. Mr. Matthews claiming that the traffic counts from 2023 show that 15% of traffic volumes make a left turn from Main Street onto Broadway. And the applicant is only using 8%. What I want to add is that 15% is not necessarily, that doesn't necessarily reflect the trip generation. And in fact, I think the 8% is more appropriate. I think there are far fewer residents who are living in the Main Street area. And also, in the Main Street area, that would be ultimately making that left turn. And so as such, I don't believe at this point that the trip distribution needs to be adjusted. It also would not have a huge impact on the actual analysis or the findings. In terms of the peak within the peak, which is, for the lack of a better word, the peakiness of traffic. So with schools, we do see a great concentration of traffic because all of the trips, for example, at a middle school would be generated within the 15 to 30 minutes during pickup or drop off. Outside of that, you may have some students, but less. With the daycare, that distribution might be a little different, and maybe Carlito can comment on this and what was experienced at the West Orange facility. But I believe that the factors that they had used were appropriate and also would not have a huge impact on their actual analysis. But Carlito, do you have anything to add to the PHF discussion?
No, I think even though they're staggering, you're still going to see different parents dropping off at different time periods within those associated hours based upon their work schedule as well.
And the last item in Mr. Matthews' memo has to do with extending the build year to 2028. That would be adjusting the traffic volumes by a year. And it's going to be a very small percentage, and again, I don't believe that it would affect the findings. And so I don't think it would it would affect the results or any of the mitigation measures. And that is it for the memo, Mr. Matthews' memo.
You had some questions that they may have answered.
Bring the mic
You had some questions that they may have answered. If you could go over that. You still have, at this moment, any questions they still haven't answered.
And so you're talking about my comments
Yes.
to the applicant. A lot has been addressed within the last submission. I already mentioned considering having a staff member help with pickup drop off to control traffic there. In terms of, I'll first start with the hawk signal, which is a signalized crossing to allow pedestrians to cross Broadway in the vicinity of the site. And so my comment on that is that the applicant needs to review the criteria again, potentially look at the volumes and see if it would meet that criteria. So the criteria is within any single hour of the day. In order to justify installing a hawk signal, we need at least 20 pedestrians within 1 single hour. And so,
1 second. Anybody who doesn't know what a hawk system is, it's those traffic lights where the pedestrian pushes a button and the light turns presumably right away. Turns red to stop the traffic so you can walk. That's called a hawk.
and it starts flashing at first to warn drivers, and then after a few seconds, it forces everyone to stop and yield to the pedestrian that is oncoming. And then after the pedestrian finishes crossing, after a certain amount of time, cars can continue to go. So the applicant also stated that the residential use generates 5 trips, or a maximum of 5 pedestrian trips. By my calculation, in order to trigger that 20 pedestrians in an hour, you have 5 pedestrians from the residential use, and if you have 5 students plus 5 guardians, that's enough, because then you have the guardians, after dropping their kids off, would presumably walk back across the hawk signal, and therefore that would be 20 trips total, thus meeting the requirements. In addition, it was brought to my attention that there is the Abbott School on Strawberry Lane that does generate a larger number of pedestrians walking to and from school, and so it is a possibility that with the addition of students at the Abbott School, you may also trigger the need for that hawk signal. So again, revisiting that criteria, looking at the design as well, I think we have discussed either shifting the hawk signal to the north side of the Primrose driveway, of the 76 North Broadway driveway, or to Strawberry Lane may be appropriate, because as shown in the drawing, the crosswalk actually lands in a driveway across the street, so that's not an ideal location.
Which one was that?
Which one was that?
You said one of those 2 locations.
Oh, sorry, having it where the crosswalk where it is proposed currently on the south side of the driveway lands in a driveway across the street, Broadway. So lastly, going through the post-implementation study methodology, so adding on a little bit, I appreciate the reminder. In terms of the hawk signal, because it is going to be constructed, or it would be constructed on a DOT road within the DOT right of way, of course, it needs to be approved by DOT. So ultimately, they have final say. They can still reject it. However, the applicant should reapproach DOT with this information, including the projected number of pedestrians crossing here. And also in the previous meeting, the planning board had asked that the applicant look at the potential queuing impacts of adding the hawk signal. So they would still need to conduct that analysis at the hawk signal as a quote unquote intersection within St. Row. and then run those numbers to see if you do affect queuing upstream and downstream. So at this point, would you like me to go through the methodology for the post-implementation study?
We covered a lot of ground. I don't know if we want to, yes. Does the applicant have any thoughts on what she just said?
No, I think I had spoken to Elaine about it before the meeting, and I don't think we take any exception with it. I think it is important to note, as was just noted, that since it's in the DOT right away, we are at the mercy of the DOT. But I think the applicant's committed to implementing it if the DOT allows it.
Or you have a thought?
Well,
Continuing or?
I think we should go through this before we move on to that.
Okay. I was thinking the same.
Yeah, it's too much to.
Yeah. Dan, you have anything on the?
Deal with this now.
Yeah.
On the hawk signal, I know that I had raised last time, and Elaine just alluded to it, that we wanted to see how it would impact traffic. If there was the installation of the hawk signal, how that might impact traffic.
Yeah.
We could take a look at that. I think it essentially it's going to stop. If you have 20 crossings in the hour, again, some of those crossings are going to be multiple people at a time. So you may have, say, 10 crossings in an hour, or 10 times it may be activated, that it stops the traffic while those pedestrians are crossing. It sounds like if it is going to happen, it's more likely to happen at Strawberry Lane as opposed to at the driveway. So it'd be similar to vehicles stopping at a signalized intersection that you may have along the corridor, since it would be at an actual roadway intersection.
In terms of number of uses, that, I'm not sure of this, but I guess it can happen at a minimum amount of time between stoppages. In other words, you can't have a string of 10 people every 5 seconds pushing the button.
Right. Yeah. You can
Minimum
also
waiting
correct. You can also set it up. You got to be careful. You don't want to make a pedestrian wait too long, because then they're going to try and cross if they feel like it's not working. But yeah, you can have it set up. It doesn't have to go every time. It can wait like a minute or so to make sure that there's more people that may get to the crossing, so they can all cross under the same stoppage.
I've gotten that feeling that the button is purely a pacifier.
Right.
Mike, did you finish
I'm
with that?
done.
Do you have any documentation of communication with the DOT around this yet, or no? Because we'd love to.
Yeah, so the last submittal that we made to the village, we copied what we submitted to the village, but in light of Elaine's updated calcs on the pedestrian number of pedestrian crossings, we have to circle back with the DOT and revisit that. We haven't heard back from the DOT yet, which is not surprising, but they do have the information, and we presented them with the potential for a hawk signal.
In terms of if you wind up at Strawberry, might be a need for the additional sidewalk get there. Willing to talk to you about that sidewalk. Talk to you people about the sidewalk. It's not a traffic issue, it's a coverage issue.
But that would be a sidewalk behind the wall.
Yes, right.
Behind the wall leading from the driveway to Strawberry, not a sidewalk.
It would be covered, yes.
Okay. We put the boards in. Okay, we have a long discussion, I'm sure it's gonna be long, on the implementation guidelines, post-implementation studies. But if anybody in the room has any thought in what we already covered, you're welcome to come up to the microphone.
John Dawson, 76 Hudson Avenue. You already got to one of my 2 points that I was going to make about the sidewalk. I mean, where's that crosswalk going to go to? But the other thing is that's worrying me about this whole analysis is the DOT is planning an entirely new transportation system on Broadway. what impact is that gonna have on doing all this great work that people have done?
Well, we don't know that. We don't know if my lifetime DOT will get around to touching Route 9. But if anybody doesn't know what the current plan is, it's a single lane, in each one lane in each direction between Broadway and Sunnyside, with roundabouts at Sunnyside and Main Street. So if you come out of Strawberry and you want to go south, you have to go north to the roundabout, go around the roundabout, and then go south, because you wouldn't be able to go across to the southbound lane. But that's so far down the road.
You listen to DOT.
It's the old, what happens if there's an earthquake? You know, there's so many possibilities. So you're correct. Things could change, but we're working on more than likely what's going to happen. Before the traffic consultant comes up, does any citizen have a comment?
That's Paul Kirby, 85 North Broadway. Quick thing on the sidewalk. I think it's my driveway. I was told I should have taken a closer look, but
Thank you for volunteering.
yeah, I wish I was consulted. As of
You
the
have a
case, this whole
utility pole in
process.
the middle of the drive.
Yeah, I mean, the traffic has gotten worse this fall. I think a lot of people are returning to the office. Even on a Monday, the cars are in front of our house and we're trying to go to the train station. So I just don't see how we'd be able to get out of our driveway, get to work. I think it's completely blocking our way to get to the train station.
Put a toll up.
Thank you. Any other citizen?
Hi, Dave Osborne, 93 North Broadway. Thank you for your careful consideration of all these matters. I've been attending these meetings for the last year and a half, pretty dutifully. The reality is, whatever analysis is done, by us, by the village, by the applicant, traffic is going to get worse. There's no way to mitigate this. So whatever the data says, it's a question of, is it going to be a disaster? Or is it just going to be really bad? You're just trying to figure out what level of really bad is acceptable. Thank you.
So, Mr. Algamart, just the board of trustees has determined that in light speak, 10% getting bad is okay.
Right.
I mean, and that's what we're trying to grapple with. And
in all due respect, it's bad now. 10% worse will be worse. In my opinion, the new zoning should never have been allowed, for multifamily. And we're not going to relitigate or rediscuss that right now.
Right.
But given that we've got that situation, it's going to be bad. Thank you. I'm not a traffic expert on it.
In order to prevent it from becoming bad and really bad, we've been discussing, that's why we were a little late, we were discussing an implementation schedule, which has a series of milestones before you get to the end and find out it's bad. So when we get to the implementation in the next part of our evening, it should help alleviate some of your thoughts. I didn't say all of your thoughts, but some of your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Glenn Cashin, 81 North Broadway. I just have a quick comment, and that's maybe a question. When is a 250-foot setback not a 250-foot setback? It's when it turns into a queuing lane for a day care center. That's when. This whole thing just seems a little absurd to me that, between the setback not really being a setback, because that's not really a driveway. Now it's going to be a queuing facility for drop-off. The stone wall, it's a precious thing until it's not, and I don't think any critical need has been met there. The burden of proof is on the applicant, and I haven't heard anything that makes me feel like the wall needs to be moved. And the same with the mansion. I mean, there's no what kind of hardship, and who are these rules applying to, right? Are they supposed to be protecting the village, or are they supposed to be protecting an applicant? I think the rules are in place to keep the village intact, and I'm just not hearing this. So thank you very much.
Before the next person, Ed, he made a strong comment about 250-foot setback for Mary Ann.
They meet the setback.
I think, I don't speak, I think he was talking about. That's what's gonna happen.
I mean, the
The
code.
point of the setback was not that there be no building.
What does that mean?
Hi, everyone. Chris Lando, 3 Ardsley Avenue East. Been following this project a very long time, though I've not been able to come here. It takes a lot when you have 3 young kids and a wife with them at Janita Poblana, very angry that I left. Come speak here for a project that's not even anywhere near my house. I live intersection of Ardsley and Broadway, but traffic and its impacts affect us acutely on a daily basis, as I'm nearly smashed into a pancake trying to cross the street to get to the train. A few things are all related, but I'd like to kind of lay out a few facts and go to the history of this application, which I view as very cynical and detrimental to the village, but I'll get to that. We have a safety problem as much as we have a traffic problem. The Traffic Calming Committee has done a study of the speeds at which people travel on Broadway, and for the vast majority of them, it exceeds the stated speed limit. Miles/hour, not surprising, but it reaches speeds that are dangerous to pedestrians. What I noticed at an intersection, which if you don't know, Ardsley connects to the Ardsley train station, and on the other end, Washington Street, which people use as a cut through to bypass the intersection of Ashford Avenue. And so you often have people racing, cutting the corner, going quickly, people in a rush, getting to their train, getting to whatever it may be. I witnessed 5 accidents at this intersection as a result of a traffic failure at that intersection. Why do I bring that all up? I became aware of this project because of the AKRF traffic study that I think either the planning board or the village conducted a number of years ago that I think ultimately relates to this project. And somehow this intersection is excluded from that study impact. This intersection is dangerous. I've written to the village countless times. I'm sure they're tired of hearing from me. The attorney has commented on some of the things I've had to say about mitigation efforts that are apparently not possible. I've written to the state and they don't respond. It's not only this applicant who doesn't get to hear from them, but it's a dangerous intersection whose impacts have not been studied, and the danger will increase with whatever the right distribution is. I'm not a scientist, but let's call it 50-50 because that's what everyone agreed to after a year and a half. There's going to be more people racing down my street coming onto Broadway, no signage, no intersection, no crosswalk. There's going to be more accidents, and eventually it's going to hit someone and kill them. There was an accident where a car turning off Ardsley hit someone in Broadway, flipped the car, got pinned between the utility pole and the stone wall, and it took firefighters an hour to get that individual out of the car. Fortunately, they were okay, but that day I happened not to go into work. I go into work 5 days a week, suit and tie, in the city, and that day I didn't go. It was at the exact moment I go and cross the street right there, and thankfully I wasn't that day. I get that this is tangential, but we talk about traffic failures. Broadway is a traffic failure. It's a failure on any measurable account. And this project will add to those failures. And we can say, oh, the Broadway redesign isn't going to happen. It might not, but there's more traction now than there ever has been in 5 years. There are real studies, there's real community engagement on this, and it's going to create more failures that compound this process. That's the personal reason why I think that the traffic is very important, but that's not the reason that the planning board makes decisions about what's appropriate for a developer. But for that, I'd like to address the cynicism of this application. It's abused every aspect of village code, planning code, zoning code, and it's continually fighting and grabbing for some result that it isn't entitled to based on the premise of what the project is. It started with a cynical analysis of the trip distribution that made no sense, that eventually winded up at this 50-50 nonsense that may or may not be true. It's not supported by anecdotal
measured evidence by a group of concerned citizens who have wasted hours and hours and hours and hours coming to these meetings to defend a fair reading of the code that has been designed for the people who live here, not the people who might want to do business here in the future. Further, there's I don't know where it went. There was the circle to nowhere to apply for coverage grievance. That's cynical. That's an abuse of the code. And it's disingenuous to say that that little circle was providing a public benefit. I know it's not in the design now, but it's reflective of an attitude that has disdain for the people who live here. Then there's the zoning question, which I understand is not a topic for this board because we have 3 boards and we don't talk about zoning, but we keep calling this a school. It's not a school. It's a daycare. So the obfuscation of what this project is,
Guys, we can't hear what he's saying if you're gonna
the
clap.
obfuscation of what this project is and the cynical nature by which it's been approached to this community, it's not fair to the people in this room. It's not fair to the people who come here every week and, try to get a fair result. And it's not fair to the other people like me who have little kids and are concerned about the safety failures of Broadway and can't come to this meeting who are texting me right now, oh, how'd it go? I wish I could have been there. I'm putting my kids to bed. And they're the people crossing the road and who would love to have the DOT put a push button crosswalk so they don't get killed when they cross Broadway and they're trying to be safe. So this project, it's abysmal. It's a failure. It's not good for the town. You could take a cynical reading of the code and keep trying to squint and make it work, or we could do what's right for the people who live here. Thank you.
The job of this planning board is not to decide whether it's a school or not, and we're not going to decide that. We covered it. The village attorney went over case law. Building inspector went over code. And we moved on. This was discussed several meetings, and it's not duty of a planning board. You can look through all the codes you want. Not our duty to determine what the definition of a school is, purposes of our intent. Our intent is to make sure that, as Mike Smith pointed out, the code allows for a 10% increase in traffic, anticipating that you can't build something without some measure of increase. And the trustees spent close to 2 years on that zoning change. That's what they came up with. And that's we're the messenger. Code is the code. Code was developed by the trustees. That boat has sailed. We're here to make sure, best we can, over a year now, making sure that the traffic generated by this project meets the code. I think we have done that. We have a very comprehensive post-implementation plan. Make sure it doesn't get out of hand. With frequent monitoring. So I know we keep recircling back to school, and I believe a group of citizens have written to the ZBA, the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm not sure where that's going to go. That's not we do. Okay.
Can I say 2 things?
Yeah, go ahead.
One, this meeting is available by Zoom. So if you have friends or neighbors that want to be heard, they can always, we take the Zoom comments and the written letters equally as important as showing up in person. And the Zoom really came out of COVID, and I implore people to take advantage of that if they can't come in person. Number 2, I just want to make sure you understand that these 5 people are deeply impacted by the traffic issues as well. Me personally, probably more than anybody here. I'm adjacent to that area. I live on a hill with a lot of traffic. I walk to the train station every day. One of the reasons is to avoid the traffic. So while you're turning around looking at everybody in this room, we are deeply impacted. And I want to make sure you understand that.
Yeah, that's something that's lost sometimes. I'm president of a co-op, And when we have our annual meeting, it's like they're talking to me like I don't live there. We live here and we're impacted. Took me 15 minutes to get from the firehouse to Main Street tonight at 3:30. Literally, I looked at my clock, because sometimes you can exaggerate. Oh, it felt like an hour. Literally 15 minutes. Project has nothing to do with that. And furthermore, if a lot of time, we've been here until 1 o'clock in the morning on this project. We've had several of council meetings early in the day. And to say we're not looking out for the interests of the village, I'm insulted. So thank you.
Before you get up, I just want you to understand something. It's my understanding, the position of INAT is not that the Primrose School itself is not a school. It's that there's a component of it, which is a daycare center, which is not permitted by the code. So and there's about 30% of their students. That's the position. It's not that the school itself is not a school. So it's the component of it. The second is just to come back to Mr. Dawson's point. I just want him to be aware, very early on when we attended the Route 9 meetings, we debated what can we do to take it into account. And we were advised that because it's not a certainty, it's not even a possibility. It needs to be funded. That it's not something that we as a planning board can take into account. So we're aware of that, sort of logically. You're saying, gee, that could come up, but in our planning, we could not take into account because there's nothing concrete, and we don't even know if it'll get funded.
Yeah, the way things are going, and you're spending $7 trillion and you make $5 trillion. I don't know how they. Mike, did you have something to say?
No, nothing to add.
Anybody else in the public who has not spoken yet?
Tony Altamira, One Meadowbrook Road. Just a couple of observations and comments. With respect to the Broadway diet, as they refer to it, the project there, the standard, I believe, is if something's foreseeable, it should be taken into account, not if it's definitely going to occur. That's simply not the standard. This is clearly foreseeable because there's plans that have been now called finalized plans for this particular stretch of Broadway. So in my mind, it should be taken into account. In fact, the AKRF report from 2023 specifically stated in its recommendations that the Broadway diet be taken into account when it comes to any type of traffic impact study done by any potential developer in the district. So I think there's been some misstatements around how that should be reviewed and taken into account. AKRF has previously said that it should be. It's clearly foreseeable, and it hasn't been taken into account in any of the traffic analysis that I've reviewed from DTS. That's one thing. Secondly, the issue of schools. I know we don't want to talk about it here. It's going to be discussed somewhere else. But our position is a preschool is not a school, a daycare is not a school, and a daycare is not an accessory use to a preschool, even if a preschool was a school. So we think a substantial portion of the building isn't a permitted use, and under the code, as it's written, if any part of the building is not permitted use, the entire project flunks. It's not just that part is somehow can't go forward. They have to essentially redact that entire piece from the structure, or the entire use is a non-permitted use. The last comment that I have, or question I have actually, is I've heard about the internal queuing that's going to take place because there's going to be cars backed up. They won't be able to get everybody up into the parking lots as people come in, and there'll be cars lined up in the driveway. Now, I guess my question is this. I was under the impression that the width of that driveway may not be sufficient to allow for fire apparatus to get up to the building if there are cars queued up in that driveway. And I don't know if that issue has been fully addressed. I don't know if it's been addressed at all, frankly. Maybe it has, but I've not seen anything that discusses that in detail. But clearly, the discussion has shifted now to substantial numbers of cars queuing up in the driveway at certain times of day. And what does that mean from the standpoint of the access by the fire department? It seems to me that this is a very important issue from a safety perspective that needs to be addressed. If they can't queue on the driveway because it's not wide enough in certain spots under the fire code and the fire standards, then those cars are going to have to go somewhere else. And where they're going to go is they're going to queue up on Broadway, which is obviously the problem that we're all deeply concerned about. So perhaps you guys can address that issue. Let us know where that stands, because I haven't seen it addressed yet. Thank you.
Two items I want to address. Route 9, the road diet, or the DOT project as we'll call it. The applicant did conduct an analysis of the road diet. Carlito, please add on if you have any additional information. This analysis was conducted, I think, about a year ago. They went through the full analysis, including, I believe, the roundabouts and the side driveway, and the only impact was the side driveway failed, and as in not that Broadway fails, but the side driveway coming out of the driveway itself was failing, and that would keep queuing on site, and there's no issue with that. But Carlito, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, we did provide an analysis with the DOT improvements early on in the process. And we've been feeding the DOT or their consultants that are working on that application any updated information with respect to our project and background traffic, and they're taking that into consideration in any of their design and analysis. So it's not like we're totally neglecting it, but again, we can only design to what we know for certainty, and let DOT take the information of our application and take that into consideration into what they may do.
And you've been working on this fire truck thing, this site and other sites. Any thoughts on what Anthony just said?
It's a work in progress. There's still a lot of work to do.
And Mary Ann, you later in the day.
Yeah, on internal queuing and the fire truck. So say there is a fire in the school. I don't think parents will still be queued up waiting to drop their students off. And so that's why I believe it's part of the reason why I think it's important to have a staff member. So if something were to go on and there was an emergency, the staff member outside could help direct parents to leave instead of continue to queue on site, so that the driveway is clear for when an emergency vehicle comes. So I don't see that as an issue.
This would require, as we talked, a permit. We could make a traffic agent part of the permit.
Yes.
And the conditions of approval.
A condi- yeah, I think that's what he meant. It'd be a condition of special permit.
So I made sure.
Yeah, actually.
Well, and if I can interject, I think there's been statements that there's going to be this never-ending queue on the property, but we've demonstrated that with the surface parking alone, it can accommodate the traffic efficiently to not have a queue. But also in the event that someone arrives and all 10 surface spaces are occupied, they're able to continue to circulate the site and then go into the garage and use parking that's available there. So I'm not sure where this never-ending queue is coming from, but the way the site is designed, it's really designed to allow absolutely no queuing internal.
Wayne? What he just said.
Yeah. So I think there is still the possibility that vehicles would be queued on their driveway, but I agree with Carlito in that you would not see spillback onto Broadway. And in fact, I think it's important to have that staff member can help direct folks into the garage if if the queue were ever getting long and getting close to reaching Broadway.
And later in the meeting, Mary Ann's gonna go over a list of village agencies that you have to seek comment, one of which is the fire department. Any other citizens? Yes.
I know you have.
Sarah, is anybody on Zoom?
Okay, yeah, I just have just on the queuing.
You gotta
Yeah,
reannounce
all right,
yourself.
reannounce, okay. Paul Kirby, 85 North Broadway. On the queuing with the mitigation, I think and Stephen will probably speak to it later, but they're expecting a pretty even distribution of car drives off because they're calling it a daycare. But if you're starting at 8:45 with the second group in the mitigation, just one example, you're gonna have a lot of parents trying to drop their kids off at 8:45 because they have to get to work, to get home to get to work, drive to work, have to get to the train station. I know as a parent of two kids, you want to get on with your day. Not gonna wait till later. So I think there's going to be rushes of cars, certain peaks within the peaks, and I don't think it's fair to assume a even distribution, especially when you're starting that late.
There is a staggering, a time staggering of arrivals that will be in the permit. So that everybody doesn't arrive at the same time. Hopefully, we're trying to mitigate the fact of everybody arriving at the same time. Part of the mitigation is to stagger the arrival.
There's two. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. There's two times. I mean, there's 1 hour peak hour,
Yeah.
and then there's 1 hour after peak.
Elaine, you want to?
So one group arrives during the peak hour and the next group arrives, I think, after peak hour or vice versa in the evening. Again, the applicant conducted analysis of both and found no impact or were able to mitigate impacts for both. I believe the second hour in the morning is going to handle the larger group of students. However, again, based on the numbers that are anticipated, they would not queue past or queue on.
The point I was trying to make is that later cohort, which is the larger cohort, they can't drop off until 8:45. Parents want to get on with their day. I know with kids, you're busy. You're a stay-at-home mom. You want to get home, do your thing, or a stay-at-home dad as well. You're a lot of two working parents. You want to get on with your day. So there's going to be a lot of people dropping kids off at 8:45, and that they don't like. My kids go to a daycare. They have a huge parking lot. They don't have a parking lot to accommodate something like that. And I'm very concerned because I live right across the street. And I don't want to, as Ben was saying, it kills the setback site the setback we were supposed to have. And it also, I think, has potential to spill on the Broadway, especially at the example I provided.
Hi, Stephanie Fable, 11 Strawberry Lane. I actually also kind of expressed some concern about the staggering approach. I just don't think it's really realistic. I mean, it's just against human nature. You know, if you have to be at work at, 9 o'clock, you don't, and your allotted slot is, not conducive to that, you're going to just drop your kid off. Same with picking the kid up. If you get to leave work early, maybe for whatever reason, it's not within your allotted slot. Guess what? You're allowed to pick up your kid at any time. It's the law. You're just going to do it. So I just don't think that this staggering and mitigating, I just don't think that it's realistic. I don't think anybody's going to abide by it. Again, just from, I don't trust the enforcement from what everybody's been saying of it. For the applicant, I don't think it'll be enforced, and I think we're gonna eventually just be stuck with it, because I just don't think it's a viable solution. And I'm very concerned.
That was a very realistic,
But the whole point, the whole point, and you've said this before, because you've quoted Ronald Reagan, right? About
trust but verify.
Trust but verify. So our approach is in planning to have a vigorous post-implementation program. And so that we make sure that it's complied with. Because if it's not complied with, then the development will not meet traffic, and they will have to have mitigation measures that bring it back. And that may include some things which could be reducing the size of the school. It could be that they do have to have other measures, stronger measures. But we are quite cognizant that we want to make sure that whatever we do is compliant and that it works.
I think you should mention the permit.
And I'm just gonna do that. This project requires a permit, and the permit has conditions in it, one of which is going to be a traffic agent at a minimum. And the implementation, which we're going to discuss as soon as we finish this current segment. And hopefully the implementation, the post-implementation studies with the periodic reports will address, make sure that they're staying within at various levels of occupation. We're not going to wait until they get to 176. Oh boy, it's all over the place. There's going to be incremental testing before you find out that you made a mistake. Hopefully, anyway, that's the plan.
And the permit's renewed every year. It's not a one-time permit. So that gives the town and the board the ability to really create change and impact if necessary.
And the renewal of the permit is not guaranteed. There's egregious failures. It's like, see you later. And I'm sure they don't, after their investment, they don't want the permit not renewed, I'm sure. I don't know how you'd survive after building something and get your permit yet, because you didn't enforce the rules.
Boris Rubenstein, 17 Strawberry Lane. I've been a resident of Irvington for about 30 years. Just one comment. I'm afraid that, when the horse is out of the barn, it's very difficult to bring it back. So I'm not sure that, after this is approved, I don't know about the implementation, but let me just say a couple of things. I spent a couple of weeks with my grandchildren there and taking them to their daycare center. And sometimes I would take them there. It would take me 7 to 10 minutes to drop my 6-month-old grandson and my 3-year-old grandson. The one day, one of them poops. And the other day, one of them has an acute separation anxiety. And instead of taking me 7 or 10 minutes, it takes me 15 or 20 minutes, even though there are staff members there, and there are other parents and other kids. So I'm afraid that although there seems to be some mitigation and some comments, practically, this is going to be a nightmare. Second, if I'm dropping my kids off and I suddenly get a call from my boss or my office, I'm not going to wait to answer that phone call until after I drop the kids. So I'm going to be stuck someplace, or either I'm going to take the kids later. And so all these issues about, you're dropping your kids at 8:45 is going to go down the wayside. Or I'm going to be stuck in a parking lot in the school talking to my boss, clarifying the things. Third thing, I'm concerned that I have a school that is going to be open, but when the kids go, I'm going to have a lot of space in that school that's going to be empty. If I own the school, I would like to monetize it. So maybe we should have a dojo with kids learning karate, and maybe we should have people there doing yoga, maybe speed dating. So I'm afraid now that what we're going to have is going to be traffic all day long, all day long. This project is a nightmare. I think it's the wrong scale project for this town.
Is there in terms of the unintended event, that would mess up the traffic flow. There's some way of, because that's a very practical question. Somebody's there for 20 minutes because of an unplanned event, and blocking traffic.
The surface parking accommodates 60 cars an hour. And then if the unlikely event that that's not sufficient, then there's underground parking. So there'll be constant queuing within the site, not even queuing on the driveway. So, I mean, there's places to park both underneath and surface. And in the unlikely event that it's used, I mean, I just heard the question of Breeze, if you use it for something else, like a yoga studio, or, I mean, that would be in violation of our special permit approval. And obviously, we would be shut
That'd be a
down
change in
immediately,
use.
right? So that's nothing that's going to occur.
Anybody else have any thoughts on what's been said so far? Okay, you're on.
Hi, Karen Donahue, 9 South Ferris. And for those that don't know, it's about 3 doors down across Main Street. That's where I live. So I have been watching the planning board meetings for several months now because this application is of interest. And I wanted to say, first of all, that I appreciate your knowledge, your expertise, and the very long hours that you dedicate to our village. I do appreciate it. Well, honestly, I don't know how you guys do it.
Either do I.
Well, please keep doing it. Let me just say that. When I exit 287 and drive down Broadway, I am in awe every time, day after day. Just, it never gets old. And honestly, I feel like a Rockefeller driving home because I've been here on Earth a long time, and I know when something is beautiful and unique. And the Broadway corridor is that to me. And I'm honored and privileged to drive down this corridor every day. I really appreciate the care that went into building it and maintaining it through many, many years. So a few months ago, I learned about this application to build infant daycare and a preschool campus on the Broadway corridor. I believe that the majority of Irvington villagers and residents are unaware of this application and the impact that it will have to our village. I believe that an application that impacts all of Irvington should require notification to the entire village, just as I'm sure the people around it got notified. I live over here, like just right there, and I'm going to be impacted. And I think somehow, I don't know what the process would be, and I'm not pointing it to the planning board, but there should be, to, you know, it's not over yet. There should be notification to the whole village. So a few points I wanted to make tonight is regarding the traffic. I've listened to a lot of meetings, and the traffic, you know, every week there's something new, mitigation, and now the mitigation has even spread over to Main Street. And that's just to be a sign of this is a problem. As many of you may have experienced, it only takes one UPS truck at the top of Main Street to halt the whole traffic flow. Parking spots on the top of Main Street that support our local and independent shops and customers are very limited. The elimination of any parking spot will impact the villagers who frequent those shops, and of course, the shop owners, which would of course change the character of our village should they not survive any. On another topic, our MFO law is 100% clear, may not be, under your, obviously not under your jurisdiction, but nevertheless, it's 100% clear that daycare is not listed as an allowed use. There's an intent the way the law was written, and there was things listed there, places of worship, schools, public libraries, museums, art galleries. These are like different kind of uses. I believe significant applications, such as this large daycare campus, must be in compliance with our laws and also in sync with our comprehensive plan. This application does not blend in nor fit with our village, the beautiful Broadway corridor, and Main Street. The points I make impact the entire village of Irvington. The application is about much, much more than one building, one driveway, and one street. It is about the future direction of our village. Thank you.
Thank you. Regarding the parking spaces, at quarter to 6, we were standing up there if you drove by, making sure that the 2 spots by the gas station are not going to be eliminated. And if they were planned to be eliminated, Board of Trustees has to approve any elimination of parking. So that seems to be off the table right now.
The parking spaces are eliminated?
Not at this moment. That's why we were standing up there at a quarter to 6, looking at the potential of what may happen. And Mike volunteered to stand in the middle of the street. And if there was no clearance for the cars, he would have got run over. So he proved.
Very brave.
Yes.
Peter Gallenker, 20 Strawberry Lane. Well, I've been coming to these meetings for a couple of years, and I don't know if anybody pay attention, but I'm always late, and I always leave early. And the reason I'm always late is because I get up at 5:30, and then I take the 6:29 train, and I go to work, and I come back after about 12 hours on 7:53 train, sorry, 6:50. So now I'm 72, and my wife told me that I cannot work like that anymore. So about 2 months ago, I started taking 7:39 train. So 6:29 train, it takes me 4 minutes to get to the Arthur station. I turn left, there's no cars. At 7:39 train, I cannot turn left. There are cars, there are buses, focus, it takes about 15 minutes to get there. So in 3 years, hopefully in good health, I'll be 75. And my wife is going to tell me that I need to take the next train, which will go 8:45 train. But I just heard today at 8:45, it's a real problem. You cannot turn. Now, I'm a psychiatrist. I actually need to be in time for my patients. I'm going to be late. My patients are going to hate me. That's not a good thing for the business. So that's why, notwithstanding the fact that everybody else has said that this is a wrong thing for the village, it's not neither aesthetically nor spiritually fits into Broadway corridor. It's even now repulsive to the eye. I just want to get to work on that.
Anything else? Oh.
One quick question. I understand, and I don't mean to be insulting of the time you all spend or to conflate the responsibilities of this board or the other boards, but if there is such an existential question about the permissiveness of the zoning application, why does it project not been referred to resolve the issue before you all invested a year of your time in having these dialogues?
You're talking about the school issue? There's a reason for that.
Not before you guys.
Yeah, that's the answer.
But are you not curious to know the answer, to know if something?
Of course I'm curious.
Well, that's a little, it's not the way the process works. And so there will be from what we're advised is that the determination is not for us. There will be a time later in the process where that ultimate decision might be made. However, I know that INAT has already presented the issue to the ZBA. And so the ZBA will deal with that application when it comes up. As far as I know, that's on October 25th. So somebody other than the planning board gets to determine it, whether it's the ZBA or whether it's a court, but it's not us. I have my own opinion as to what it should be, but that's irrelevant.
Thank you, Mike, for elaborating on my simplistic answer. Yes.
Okay, good evening, member of the board, Mr. Chairman, Steve Appia for INAT. I just wanted to make a very brief few comments.
Emphasis on the word brief.
Yes, I emphasize brief. It's been a year since I first started looking at this project. And a year ago, it was 180 children, 57 dwelling units, a 70-30 distribution split to the north on favored the north on Broadway, and no staggering of student audience. Now it's 155 children, 50 dwelling units, more realistic 50-50 split of the trip distribution, and staggering of arrivals of students, leaving only 63 students in the peak hour. I just find it interesting how that evolution has taken place where with the 180 student count and the 57 units, the applicant told this board and this community that there were no problems and that the minor difficulties can be mitigated. It seems like there's a lot more mitigation that had to be done, including reducing the number of children allowed to attend the school during the peak hour.
Just for clarity, 155 it might become a maximum. It can't go beyond that to the full until we look at the implementation.
Yes.
It's not a new limit. So
no, I understand that. It's what they're proposing now, so that they can run traffic numbers based on that, with the hopes that they'll be able to prove in the future that there are no difficulties with the 155 and they want
it's
to
one of
return
the
to.
interim steps that we're looking at. So that
And I'm looking
so
forward
that
to
we
hear,
can see the cliff coming and not fall off it.
which is good planning. And I'm interested in seeing what the implementation process looks like when we get to that part of the discussion. Remember though that when they were proposing mitigation, they were doing mitigations of fractions of a second of signal timing. Now it's no less than a full second. Some signal timing now changes that are more robust, several seconds, 15 seconds or so. They're still only getting what I would consider razor thin margins where they pass the requirements of the village code. And to me, that's not leaving much room, or actually any room, for any additional development that may be in the wings, ready to bring an application before this board for approval in the North Broadway corridor or any other location where some traffic feeds into North Broadway. Elaine mentioned something about the no-build situation as far as queuing is concerned, that the applicant's obligation is to mitigate it back to the no-build scenario. Well, queuing on Broadway during the peak hours, as far as the 95th percentile queue in the no-build,
is not mitigated back to the no-build scenario. When you take a look at what the build queuing or the queuing is in the 95th percentile with their traffic. So that's in our estimation, in my professional opinion, that's an impact that they have not mitigated. As far as spreading the peak hour by staggering their student arrivals, again, I provided some graphs that showed what the impact is on 15-minute traffic volumes on Route 9. And what we're looking at is just broadening the peak hour from one 60-minute period to ultimately, with additional development, a 2-hour basic time frame as far as peak hour is concerned, both in the morning and in the afternoon. So village residents, people who work in the village, are looking at 2 hours worth of peak hour rather than a single 60-minute period. If you allow staggering here at this site, then have to do the same thing with another development that comes in and proposes to you, well, you let Primrose and Varma take this approach and mitigate their impacts by staggering their arrivals and departures. We're here with our proposal, and we'd like to do the same thing. Every other subsequent development is now going to key in on that as a mitigation to get by the impacts that they may have during the peak hours and start loading up in the non-peak hours. As far as the mitigation that they mentioned for, or that they're suggesting for a left turn lane on Main Street, I believe that they need to show a better concept plan, show how the transition is going to work, how they're going to extend that lane. They're saying 10 feet, and how that's not going to affect the parking spaces on the north side of Main Street at that intersection. With the 10-foot lane plus the transition, I see it as affecting those parking spaces and probably having to eliminate both of them. That basically is the comments that I wanted to make, some in response to what was said here tonight, and some based on my review of the previous submission by the applicant. And if you have any questions or would like to discuss any of the items that I brought up, I'd be happy to state. Thank you.
As I stated earlier, we were up there earlier before 6 o'clock looking at the 10 feet and much space. As I said, Mike was standing in the middle of the road where that 10-foot was.
Did you think that they could build a lane there?
It looked like there was enough room without touching the parking space. And like I said, if the parking spaces have to go, the trustees have to.
Well, in basic design for a lane, there is the necessity for the components to be the full lane of the full width of that lane, 10 feet, and then a transition from that. You can't just abruptly change from no lane to a left turn lane. There's that angle, what we call a transition, that has to be made. And, given that it's possibly part of a state arrangement, because I think the state has jurisdiction over that little part of Main Street at their intersection. The state's requirements would have to be met. And if not, just good engineering would probably want a better transition. And I believe that transition is going to interfere with the parking space design.
Okay, thank you. Elaine, you want to address some pertinent things he might have said?
Sure, I agree that the impacts are met with razor thin margins. However, they are met, and I think that's the what we need to be. And also, the applicant had demonstrated, I believe their previous analysis had 180 with staggering, and they had shown that 180 with staggering had worked using their analysis. They had also, the more recent analysis uses 155 with staggering, and they still show that. In terms of the impacts at the Main Street intersection for queuing, I just looked through the queuing tables. I did not see any impacts with respect to queuing at that intersection. But if Mr. Mackey has any specifics, where the impact criteria for queuing is not met, I'm happy to take a closer look. I think that was all I wanted to address.
Yeah, Carlito. Stop watching the game.
I'm a Met fan.
I feel bad for you. You know, we were out there eyeballing it, and we'd like to see in a scale drawing that the addition of the approximately one car left-hand turn lane to put in the required transition, that there still can be a parking space that's there now. I mean, it's one thing to look at it and eyeball it. Yeah, it looks right. It's another thing to actually put it down on the set of plans that it works.
Yeah, so
If you haven't done it already.
yeah, I mean, what we presented in the concept plan is scaled, albeit off of aerial imagery. We, you know, when we ultimately, if the board was so inclined to approve it with the condition of implementing that improvement, we would obviously have to do field survey, do a formal design drawing set for that improvement.
I don't want to wind up, when you do all that, what you just said, that it doesn't work, and then you have to go to you approve something that won't work without knowing that it works.
I actually think that it's a pretty simple drawing to do, because I stepped off 10 feet, I stood in the roadway.
Yeah.
Almost got run
No,
over.
and I think that's what we have on the,
The distance as cars went around me, the parked cars there. So I would think that you would know what the width is, the distance is from wherever the end of the carve out is. Because obviously the turning lane is not starting in the crosswalk. It's only extending, that bump out's only being extended maybe 10 feet. And maybe you're adding another car into that left lane. That's how I understand.
So the drawing was already prepared. So, I'm not sure if you can share your screen to show it.
yeah.
Already, I reviewed it as part of the, it was either the July or the August measure.
Okay. Is there anybody else?
I just to provide some queuing information. At the left turn lane, with 63 students and timing adjustments.
Left turn lane where?
The eastbound Main Street left turn at Broadway,
Okay.
the lane we're talking about now. The AM peak hour queue is 255 feet long. That lane is about 95 feet long now. They're proposing to make it 105 feet. So the queue is just simply not going to fit in that lane. And they're not bringing that queue back to no build conditions. The midday peak, it's 229 feet. And the PM peak hour, that queue is 316 feet. All trying to fit in a 105-foot lane that I don't believe can be built with the proper transitions. There are 7 other failures. The distance between Main Street on Broadway, the distance between Main Street and the next intersection to the north or to the south is 360 feet. Those Broadway queues are 463, 664, and 653 feet in length during the AM, midday, and PM peak hour, far exceeding the distance between intersections and not mitigated. Main Street southbound, distance between Main Street and I believe it's Heritage Hill, 670 feet in the AM peak hour. That queue is 717 feet and not mitigated. And on Broadway southbound from Heritage Hill, the next intersection to the north is 160 feet. And that's just blown out in the morning, over 800-foot queuing. And those queue values, not ones that I made up or that came out of the simulation that I did. These are the numbers that are in the tables that the applicant provided for their analysis of 63 students during the peak hour with timing adjustments.
I think what's being omitted here is what's the incremental change in the queue length, and that's what we're required to mitigate. So at Main Street, the incremental change in queue length was never more than 10 feet. That's why we're extending the turn lane by 10 feet. So I think what Mr. Maffia is presenting is what the queue length is, and would it exceed storage? Yes, but it exceeds storage without the project. And we were only extending it by 10 feet, so we're mitigating that 10 feet, which is what the applicant's obligation is too.
Well, that is like in opposition to what Elaine just said here at this meeting tonight, is that mitigation means to returning it to no build condition.
Yes, they are returning it to no build condition.
By
They
adding
are.
10 feet to the lane.
They are returning it to the no build condition and satisfying the requirement to mitigate.
What did they do for the through lanes on Broadway,
At which intersection?
Main Street and Heritage Hill, southbound Broadway?
Timing adjustments.
Timing adjustments, they do return it back to below no build in that case.
What was it in the no build?
On the table, it has an AM peak hour, no builds, 95th is 8:24, and build with timing adjustments is 8:16.
These are again still razor thin items that, you know, how could you say that, okay, that's what they're allowed to do, but that passes any kind of test as far as what the impacts are, what traffic in the village is looking like. And again, I point out the spreading of the peak hour, changing the peak hour into 2 hours worth of traffic congestion and other issues. And
I think you made your points and Elaine addressed them, and
I will look at.
Mike also addressed the issue of, code allows for, we didn't make the code with the messenger. Code allowed, what did you say before? Code allowing
10% degradation, but then they're not contributing 10%. I mean, the point that, and I'm glad that Carlito raised it, is there is a certain amount of degradation that has already occurred before without their project.
The 10% degradation applies to the level of service. As far as queuing is concerned, there is no indication as to how much or, you know, what percentage degradation. If you're less than that, it's acceptable. It just says an increase in the 95th percentile to exceed the storage lane of a storage lane.
But even as razor thin, they meet it. I mean, that's
95th percentile queue length extending to the adjacent intersections.
dot the i's and cross the t's.
Right.
We've been at this a
understand.
year and a half.
These are the
and-
points that I'm
and-
making.
And, from the beginning, as you well stated, to today, there's been a great deal of work in mitigation and trying to minimize, the impact below the allowable 10% degradation. And as of right now, our consultant, and their presentation and our consultant's review of that presentation indicates that they meet the code. Now, you have to recognize that code allows for degradation. That's what we have to work with.
Or if that degradation has to be, is above that requirement, they have to mitigate.
That's why they mitigate it. Thank you. Yes. Hi,
It's Peter
you
McCallum.
can raise that. You're gonna get a stiff neck. Maybe you can raise it.
There you go. Yeah.
Thanks. It's Peter McCallick, it's Strawberry Lane. And I wanted to start with just a basic question about the operations. I don't think I've ever heard what the closing time of the Primrose is. Does anyone know?
Yeah.
It's 6 p.m.
Okay, well, how is that going to work when the off-peak pickup hour is from 5:45 to 6:45? will be 6:45.
Closing time, it sounds like it's 6:45.
Okay, well, 6:45 sounds like it's 7 o'clock, right? 6:45 is the last kid gets to be picked up, right? Somebody has to close up.
You're leading to a point.
Is there a question? Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just wondering what is the actual answer? If 6:45 or 7 o'clock, I mean, I think they're both equally late. I think we just have to know with more precision, because a lot of work is, I guess, going to depend on how the parents who are picking up from 5:45 to 6:45 use that hour. Okay, so if we're imagining that all those parents are coming in at 6:45, possibly 7 o'clock, to pick up their kids who are young enough where they're actually supposed to be in bed probably by 7 o'clock, I think it just tilts that whole off-peak period down towards that 5:45 mark, right? The variation of what Stefania said, that your kid has to be in bed at 7 o'clock, right? You're not picking your kid up at 6:45. So I would really love to hear more about the process that is going to incentivize somebody to come at 6:45 just to have that even distribution within the hour, right? Another thing about that, there are 500 primroses in the country or so. I set out to actually look at what their hours were. But it was too time consuming. But bottom line is that almost every primrose in the entire country closes at 6 o'clock. There are a few that close at 6:30. I did not find a single one that closes after 6:30. I think that probably tells us something too, right? I mean, if there were a real genuine market for daycare after 6:30, I think Primrose would probably be exploiting it. So again, just goes to that fallow period between 6:30 and 7, where at least on paper, there are pickups being made, but are they really actually going to be made? And that was a genuine question. Have we actually gotten any detail about what the incentive program will be that keeps people from all piling in at 5:45?
I said she had a reasonable point of view, and you're reinforcing it. We'll have to look at our implementation plan to see how that works.
I think the incentive is if they can't make it work and the traffic numbers don't work, they run the jeopardy of not getting a special permit, and that's a huge incentive.
Right. On the
I
back
mean,
end.
like we know that they're putting a tremendous amount of effort into this, and they're trying to make money. So our assumption is the incentive is that they don't want to lose that permit, and so they're heavily incentivized to make this work if they're committing to it. And we're putting a very robust and intense post-implementation study into this so that we can ensure that it does work. I mean, that's the incentive.
There's also an incentive on the other side in the form of seeker, asking you to take into account all reasonably foreseeable cumulative risks now, right? So that what happens on the post-implementation side doesn't just become a dumping ground for problems that we can't worry about today. So,
what's the foreseeable risk that you're pointing out?
I think reasonable minds could probably conclude that there is a foreseeable risk that distribution between 5:45 and 6:45 won't be that perfectly spaced intervals that appears in the calculation. Just let me elaborate one just quickly because it was picked up earlier, right? The so-called peak hour factor. Basically, it's just, their best guess at how that spacing will happen. So here's what I know about it. The very, very highest peak hour factor you can get is a 1. 1 means that every trip is completely evenly spaced. So if you have 60 cars in an hour, they're arriving one after one each minute, like a metronome. The worst possible peak hour factor you can get is 0.25. That means that every single car arrives all at the same time, 15-minute interval. I don't think it was actually mentioned, but it was in Stephen's memo. what do you think is the peak hour factor that they're using for that 5:45 to 6:45 slot? It's 0.92. Does that sound right to you, given what we know about human nature?
If I may address peak hour factor.
No, I'm sorry, okay, go ahead.
That's why we have a consultant.
So peak hour factor, the only change you can make, the only reasonable change that you can make with peak hour factor in terms of this project and their analysis is their own driveway. If they make the peak hour factor as low as it can be, which I believe is something like 0.25, then the driveway itself would get worse, but that's again just the driveway exiting the site. And at most, it would be some cars backing up on their driveway, not impacting Broadway in any way. Peak hour factor on its own at the individual intersections that they're analyzing, at Heritage, at Sunnyside, at Main Street, you can't adjust the peak hour factor for just the number of cars that they're adding. Peak hour factor is dependent not only on the cars that are generated by the site at those intersections, but all the traffic. And that's why with traffic analysis, whenever we're adding new cars, we're not adjusting peak hour factor at other intersections. We're looking to adjust possibly the driveway, but again, with Carlito's analysis, it's just going to affect their driveway exiting. And so it's not reasonable to change the peak hour factor at the other intersections in response to the number of cars that they're adding.
Well, surely we can at least get it to the same level that they had at the West Orange facility, right? 0.76. I realize that you said earlier that you don't think it's going to make a hill of a difference, but it is better to be safe than sorry, right? Why give them the benefit of the doubt when they have the burden of proof?
I mean, Carlito could update his analysis for a 0.76 PHF at his driveway and just at his driveway. But again, you won't see any changes at Main Street, at Sunnyside, at Heritage. It won't affect any of the other intersections. You would not be changing the PHF at any other intersections or approaches to 0.76.
From a planning perspective, surely the board wants to know, worst case scenario, if there's a PHF of 0.25, if you have 60 cars or whatever it is arriving at 5:45 to 6, I mean, that's, I don't know what you would call that test. You mentioned it earlier, Mr. Manfredi, the test of what was the planning board thinking test, essentially, whether you want to call that a technical violation of the code or not, but that is like a real world test. In a village that pretty much lost its mind because one nonprofit had a fundraiser a couple of years ago and they had the streets jammed. I'm talking about the Villa Lavaro affair. Okay, I mean, those are the expectations in this village. I think, realistically, going back to the point about what's reasonably foreseeable, wouldn't you want to know if a bunch of people showed up at 5:45 to pick up their kid as they're legally entitled to, this incentive be damned, that would change the analysis, the spacing for that off-peak hour, which is doing a lot of work. You can't say, oh, we'll handle that at the back end when here we are sitting here now knowing a bit or two about human nature.
But all we know is we have no idea how many students we're even talking about. We have no idea how many will be enrolled at that hour. How many will choose to do that? That will all come out in a post-implementation study.
Well, no, I'm sorry, but that can't be right.
What do you mean? Why do I think that people, you said, what's the incentive for people to not pick up their, so that people won't pick up their children at 6:45? Because they want to be home. What makes me think that there will be parents who will leave their children there until 6:45?
That's exactly my point.
No, that's his point, is that it's the peak is going to be much earlier, and it's actually.
And so it'll come out in a post-implementation study, exactly what the student population does and how they behave will come out in a post-implementation study.
If we're talking about reasonable foreseeability.
I can't even foresee how many people we're talking about.
It's reasonable foreseeability.
I can't even reasonably foresee how many people that is. You and I have a disagreement, and therefore.
I'm not even sure, okay.
I can't assume, are you assuming that all 1/3, are you assuming 1/3 of let's take the 60, if it was 30% of 180 students. So let's assume 60 students in their
in what you want to call their daycare program. Or because this will be extended day also. So how many students are you expecting to stay as late as they can? Just give me a number. You're saying it's reasonably foreseeable. So how many students do you expect will stay until the end of the day, until it closes?
Yeah, I think there may have been a misunderstanding, sir, but I'm saying that they will almost certainly not do that. I'm thinking
I'm
of,
asking you, how many do you think will stay as late as closing? So I'm asking.
very few
Okay. And so how many will stay until an hour before closing?
at 5:45.
Yes.
I would say, yeah, anybody who has that opportunity in that.
How many?
What are we looking, I'm sorry, I've lost track of, is it 92 that are in the off-peak PM?
Excuse me.
All right, so let's just say 85.
So you're assuming 100% of those students will stay until an hour before closing, right?
They will leave at 5:45 when the programming ends. That is what we've been led to believe. I don't understand the, Okay, look, that was actually a good segue. Thank you. Because I think about reasonable foreseeability. I mentioned this memo from AKRF before. I don't know if you ever actually got a chance to see it, Mr. Smith. This is the one from 2021. AKRF projected what the traffic impacts would be after the rezoning of the MFO. And so back then, it was a slightly different conversation because we were looking at 150 peak hour trips in the AM. And I pointed out that AKRF had projected 50 trips. So different playing field now. That's not why I bring it up. What I bring up is the fact that 4 years ago, the board of trustees thought it was reasonably foreseeable to look at the traffic impacts for fully developed versions of both big sites in the MFO. So they did senior housing on, I think probably what's 76 North Broadway, and then they did 68 unit multifamily on 88 North Broadway. So in other words, 4 years ago, for the Board of Trustees, it was reasonably foreseeable that both of those lots would be developed, and they, without knowing the exact future, they took their best shot at estimating what was coming down the pike. Why can't we do that here? I know that the DOT has different standards for when other developments have to be taken into account. That doesn't apply to Seeker. It just has to be reasonably foreseeable, right? I think we can all reasonably agree that something's going to happen at 88 North Broadway. You know, it's not just complete guesswork to figure out what that might be. It could just be a more robust version of what's there now.
And why isn't it pure guesswork? 4 years ago, would you have reasonably foreseen that this was the project here at Maxon property?
What is the level?
I don't think so.
That didn't stop the Board of Trustees. All I'm asking
Board of
is why can't the
Trustees-
planning board just follow the example of the
No,
Board
the
of
Board of
Trustees?
Trustees, and I appreciate the statement made from the woman from South Ferris, but it was addressed to the wrong board. The Board of Trustees sets the policy. The Board of Trustees has made it a policy that they want to encourage development of that land, or actually to allow the private owner of that property to develop the land. As much as we all may like and enjoy the Broadway corridor, the property owner has a right to develop the land in some way. We can't just prevent the private property owner from developing it. The Board of Trustees decided that this was the proper development of it. If anybody has a complaint about that, please go see the Board of Trustees.
And I should add, I know we're going back to that, but I believe the trustees did not take this lightly, and it took them 2 years of innumerable public hearings. And here we are. They changed the rules and we become the messengers.
So there's no misunderstanding. I'm saying that the Board of Trustees did it the right way. They brought in AKRF to look at potential developments. So that development at 88 North Broadway didn't become any less likely over the last 4 years. If anything, it became only more likely. So I am simply asking, you have the authority to just incorporate that into the planning for the traffic impact for this project.
So I think you're asking that we have to set a much more stringent, because the next property may come in. I think if the next property comes in, they're already at this applicant is already at the limit of the 10% increase that Mike spoke about. And there's likely not much room left in the code for the next property.
I'm sorry, I know you guys have mentioned that before. But since you're mentioning it again, I have to point out, I'm sorry, that there's just no basis for that anywhere in the code.
So I have to leave that to our code.
Once the new building goes up, it's anything that comes in is a new action.
Could be.
It's a black and white issue, sir. I mean, there's no debating it.
Okay.
Sorry, just a bit of housekeeping, if you don't mind. It's very, very quick, but Karen mentioned the fact that there are very few people in Irvington who even know this is happening. One reason for that probably is that no code compliant notice has ever gone out on this matter in 16 months. You might remember I was writing about this earlier on. It then didn't seem to be doing anything, so I gave up. But is there a reason why you're not enforcing the code, sir?
I will defer to council.
I don't handle the building.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
I mean, did you guys catch what they were saying about the value of the property? I think what they're saying, that when it's all said and done, $30 million is what the projected value of it is. This, project of that size, all they have to do is just toss some envelopes in the mail every 2 months and put something in the paper. I mean, and it's already in the code. It's not like we're asking them to do us a favor. That's what they're supposed to be doing, and they haven't done it.
I will ask Mr. Ed to.
Okay.
I don't have the answer.
Okay.
I don't have the answer.
And along similar lines, they are required to provide the full unredacted copy of their contract, assuming they're still contract vendees. What they provided is basically something without any kind of appendices and a heavily redacted bunch of pages. They're only allowed to redact price. So when can we expect to have the full unredacted contract as required by the code?
I defer to our code experts and legal counsel.
I mentioned this before, but in a couple of emails ago. All right, so there's a clear legal right for parents to pick up their kids from daycare that does not exist with a school, like a proper school. So, basically the law is actually pretty clear about this. They have on-demand access. There's literally nothing that daycare can do to prevent a parent from seeing their child. Unlike in a school where the parents would, probably can't just walk into history class and just have a word with it. So I'm just wondering if there's some kind of legal analysis coming, explaining how they can curtail access at the parking level. Right? Because if somebody is, getting off work 5 o'clock and they otherwise would have to wait until 6:30, right? Why not just pop into the parking lot and either.
That issue was brought up by the women in the back there, and I said that was a reasonable thought, and we were going to look at. One of the things we'll look at is the viability of the staggering.
Okay, is that something that's gonna be discussed in public?
We'll disclose whatever it is. I haven't looked at it from that point of view, so we have to discuss it.
All right, it's just one thing that occurs to me now in light of the revisions to the site plan. If you're gonna have an opening on Strawberry Lane, well, there's really nothing stopping somebody from just going up there, parking their car, picking up their kid. They wouldn't violate any contractual obligation with Primrose. In other words, they get to have their on-demand access to their kid and they don't pay any penalty. I mean, that sounds far-fetched maybe, but that is actually what happens on Riverview Road all the time with the high school. I've seen it too with the use of the lot down the street at Good Shepherd, which is used as a pickup lot for kids from the high school. You know, I mean, that's not a big deal, but you know, it's something about right. Yeah, I think I mentioned this too. So our quiet hours start at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock is already kind of late. And I gotta say, I'm not thrilled about the way that the planning board seems to be very generously donating our peace and quiet just so that this developer gets to meet some benchmark that was probably never, ever intended to work this way. I'm pretty sure if the Board of Trustees knew that the solution to the benchmark was just going to be more traffic just later, I think they would be pretty surprised, genuinely. You know, and you do have the power to do something about it. It's right there in the code. There's a provision in the special requirements for the permit. Development has to be in character, harmony of the neighborhood. That's not just the kind of the generic talk that you are familiar with from other parts of the code. It's in the MFO. I think this might be the only part of the code that actually does this. That language about harmony with the neighborhood is actually a specific requirement. So you can't just say, oh, well, the Board of Trustees passed the MFO, and therefore everything that the MFO allows is consistent with the character of the neighborhood. They are telling you that they want you to look at it. So I think there might have been a misunderstanding about that. And then as for your earlier point, Mr. Smith, about what the Board of Trustees was handcuffing you with this, you know, the MFO. I went to a lot of those meetings, you know, and Brian Smith in particular, but a few of the others, you know, we would come up there, we had our concerns just as we do now. They kept on giving us answers. And the one answer that was always the most effective, the one that we never knew what to do with, they kept running this play like some kind of like, you know, Pee-wee football coach. We would say, what about the traffic? And they would say, the planning board will figure that out. What about the architectural style? Oh, the planning board will figure it out. That's what we have a planning board for is, and I'd never been to the planning board before. I figured, so how was I going to contradict that, right? I'm just saying that you have much more power than you think, than I think you understand. And part of that power is that you get to decide what is a pass of the traffic provision, right? So the traffic provisions we're all talking about are the minimum requirements. Talk to your traffic consultant. Ask them, are there any alternatives that we can use? I mean, I think you were actually going in that direction, sir, a couple of months ago. You had a good idea, right? You wanted to see more of a buffer. Even though it wasn't required by the code, you wanted to see more of a buffer. That was you exercising that right given to you by the Board of Trustees. Thank you very much.
We'll have to look.
Can I just correct for the record? I'm sorry. I keep hearing 6:45, but for the B track, the group B, the latest pickup time is 6:30, not 6:45.
Okay, listen, I'm sorry. I don't ever do this.
Yeah, identify, you came back to the.
Peter McCallick, Strawberry Lane. Yes, it is confusing, so I understand why you're confused. But the application says both, right? It's the, what is it called? The building plan, building program, Group A, Group B, says that the release is at 6:30. But the actual traffic summary tables and mitigation tables, they spell out completely. It's 5:45 to 6:45. All three of them. It's not a mistake. And that makes sense because the peak period ends at 5:45. So the off-peak period has to start at 5:45 and it goes to 6:45. So yes, we're talking about a 7 o'clock shutdown. Thank you.
By the way, if you don't think a year and a half of looking at this is not a thorough look at, we have a disagreement. Elaine, you have anything to offer on? I think we have to look at that staggering thing. There was some reasonable issues. How does it work if somebody just shows up? But, anything else on the traffic things?
No, except I think we should go to the
Yeah.
post-implementation study.
Right.
So in terms of the post-implementation study, the applicant's latest submission provides a revision. I, in my memo, provide track changes to those revisions. Most notably, I'm outlining just more detailed guidelines of the schedule in which these studies should be completed. In terms of, I also have some revisions in terms of just in noting and being very clear that the site is required to mitigate. The site is required to mitigate all their traffic impacts based on the traffic impact study. And if any of the mitigation measures are not completed, they need to still revisit the planning board and rediscuss those mitigation measures. In terms of the scenarios, I'm also proposing that there are multiple scenarios in which the applicant needs to analyze. So the applicant intends that they would open with 100. The applicant intends that they would open with 155 students. With 155.
Still hard to hear you.
Why don't you move up?
You're welcome to sit up
That's us, we
Because
can
I'm
do.
gonna listen to this again, there's too many numbers. I'm gonna listen to it online.
Okay, but you're welcome to sit up here if you want, if you haven't.
I wanna make sure the recording is too.
Oh, we're checking it all the time.
The voice?
We're checking the recording all the time.
No, but the voice?
Her voice, yeah. We're checking it all.
Could you just move your mic closer?
I'm as close as I can be.
Without swallowing.
Yeah.
We have these mics don't.
Not
these
going back
mics
to a
are to
speaker.
pick up the sounds for the
Yeah.
recording, rather than to project
If
out.
the speaker goes on, then it echoes.
That's where I got started. She can't hear us. She thinks that the transcription is not going to.
Oh, yeah, no, we're checking, we're constantly checking the transcript.
I'm gonna study this afterwards. I can't digest all these numbers.
So they are intending to open with 155 students, and then with detailed study, with review of the traffic counts, they are intending to potentially increase that to the full 176 students, and potentially removing the time of day restrictions. And before those steps are taken, they still need to analyze those scenarios. So I'm proposing that they analyze what they actually counted. So they need to conduct traffic counts, not just at their driveway, but also at all of the intersections where they had studied in their traffic impact study. They need to study, conduct analysis for the actual conditions, for the actual traffic counts that they collect. They need to study the projection of the traffic counts from 155 students to 126 students. And then they need to study the projection of 176 students with removal of the time of day restrictions. So only when we determine that the last two scenarios with 176 students with and without staggering, if we determine that those two scenarios are able to meet the mitigation requirements of the village code, then they can take those steps. So we want to make sure we're taking a hard look at what's happening before they're allowed to open it up more. In my track changes and my suggestions, I had also indicated that they should not just collect traffic counts, but also conduct a detailed traffic analysis of those traffic counts. And I would actually like to turn to the board to see their thoughts on that, whether or not they would be required to just collect traffic counts, or whether they need to analyze the traffic counts as well.
I think they need to do the full analysis.
And it's my understanding that I believe the entire board feels this way. Is that correct?
Lori?
Yes.
I do. Yeah, yes.
So in terms of, in that case, one of the big items here is if at any point we determine that either under the actual conditions when they counted or the projected conditions, if they.
I'm sorry to interrupt. The record show that every member of the board nodded yes, in case it didn't get picked up on.
With the analysis of the actual conditions of the traffic counts that they collect, and also the projections that they would grow those counts to with the 176 students, if at any point the analysis shows that the level of service delay and possibly trip generation and maybe any other factors that we'd like to consider, if they have degraded beyond what was projected by the traffic impact study, they would be required to either implement additional mitigation measures, or they would be required to not pursue in the case of 176 students, if they are shown to exceed the mitigation requirements and they can't mitigate, then they would not be able to expand the student population, or they would not be able to remove the time of day restrictions. That's generally it for my suggestions in terms of the post-implementation study methodology. I understand that the planning board also has additional suggestions to consider, and of course, this is something that we need to continue to refine as we hear more from the residents, as we hear more from the applicant in terms of the operations. It's going to be really important to hammer down also just a method to make sure that staggering is enforced, and in that case, in the traffic counts that are collected, we want to make sure that staggering is actually happening as well. I believe one of
and the traffic counts demonstrate that staggering is working.
Correct. So they would be collecting traffic counts at their driveway. We would see how many cars are entering during every 15 minutes for about a 2-hour period, possibly more, for each peak period. And so with that, we're able to see how many cars are entering and exiting, and whether or not there's staggering, how many cars are entering during each hour. I know there's some discussion on things like how often the study should be conducted. I know we discussed potentially doing within the first 2 months of opening, and then every 6 months after that, and then once the planning board determines that all the requirements are met or traffic has normalized and there is no impact, then those requirements could be removed. But again, we're going to keep looking at this and refining this as we go.
And the first 2 months, you don't know how you're going to fill the seats. So we picked first 2 months to do the first study, and then 6 months thereafter. And obviously, not going to be calendar months. We may adjust that. We don't want to wind up in August. The school is closed in the 6 month. So when we get into more details, it'll be very close to what we generally laid out as first 2 months, and then maybe it's every semester or however you work. You're not envisioning continual registration. You have a block that starts, say, a fall semester, and a new block in the spring semester, or can it grow within the semester?
We're a continual all year round operation, so it doesn't really fluctuate drastically, except in the summer, just like anything else. There is downturn, slight, but not a drastic.
We wouldn't want one of these analyses to be done when there's a downturn.
Yeah, we wouldn't be doing that per the traffic. We generally don't do it in July, August. Anyways, we do it during school operating year. That's the reason why a lot of our studies were doing during September to June period, and we held off on the last traffic study.
You didn't identify yourself. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Rocco Varma from Varma Development. And we're confident and comfortable with the post-implementation study that's proposed by KRF and the board, and we're confident that this is going to work irrespective. So we're okay and agree to post-implementation.
Does anybody have a thought on the, on the
I
implement?
wanted to ask Mr. Varma.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, I should have said. the board first.
I would love for you to address what we're hearing about lack of confidence in the staggering and the ability to control pickup times by parents. So if you could speak to that, I know I would appreciate it, and hopefully the audience.
Sure, it'll be a monetary incentive to the families that are going to be burdened with a latter schedule. So we haven't really structured that yet because we didn't have a finalized plan. And now that we have a finalized plan, the school would start to create a monetary plan for tuition based off the early hours and based off the latter hours. And one statement I'd like to disagree with maybe the public and some of the individuals on. Pre-COVID, all of our schools were open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But during COVID, the hours were reduced because of circumstance. Post-COVID, everybody regressed to 6 p.m. Not everybody, I understand, most of school operations. Certainly the ones that we have were regressed to 6 p.m. for several different reasons. Today, a lot of the Primrose operations and our competitors are open till 6:30, if not 7 p.m., back to what they used to be pre-COVID. We just have not taken that stand. But in this condition and this school situation, considering what we are agreeing to, we would be modifying the schedule based off of what we come to an final agreement based off the board suggestion with the staggering what we have come to an agreement on. Hence the reason why there is maybe a slight confusion, but that's because it's a moving target based on what the board and the public is suggesting to the board accordingly. So the monetary incentive will also be a monetary incentive will also be a monetary penalty for folks and individuals not meeting that boundary. If we continuously see that right now, there is a monetary penalty for all parents that go beyond the 6 p.m. hour or the 7 p.m. in certain schools. There's $1 per minute. There will be a similar type of a penalty, if not maybe more stricter in this case, to prohibit that. And if we continuously see that, let me take a step back. We also have created a buffer for unforeseeable emergency situations in this. That's why it's not maximized to the full capacity that we'll be picking up at a certain time or dropping off at a certain time. We've created that buffer for that purpose. But if we continuously see a parent or a family, which does happen at times, that are constantly late, when we continuously penalize them, eventually we have to have a conversation to essentially see if this is maybe not the right fit, because this is a school operation that has to function, humans are involved. And little lives are involved, so we always make sure that that is a strong consideration from operational standpoint.
Mary Ann, the permit that we eventually, the staggering would be part of the permit.
Yes.
And the post-implementation monitoring includes curb count, what do you call it?
It'll include driveway counts.
Driveway count.
And we'll take a look at every 15 minutes and whether or not the staggering is being adhered to.
And there's been a lot of good reasons presented as to why that may not work. And we have the wherewithal at some point, when that first 2-month study comes in and the driveway count doesn't meet the staggering for whatever reason. It's the wherewithal.
I think we should talk about that. I mean, number one, hopefully you talk to the applicant and get it straight. I mean, hard now to say, but the penalty is. That's something to talk about.
There is a mechanism to make sure it works. Not sure, we just heard, there's not much of a mechanism right now as to what do you do about it if it doesn't work.
You're talking about after 2 months, after a period, after
Yeah.
a certain period
Yeah,
it
well, then
goes
the
on,
6
then
months, yeah.
then you've got your special permit that you can not grant. But
Right.
I'm just focusing. Yeah, I'm just focusing on the 2 months. I mean, I don't know that you're gonna want to revoke a special permit at 2 months. You might want about what you can
Oh,
do
yeah, well,
there,
then the shot across the bow,
but at later points.
the
That's
shot
something.
across the bow, and
Yeah.
then the 6 month, yeah. So there is a mechanism, we just have to work at, to get to the permit stage, with fine points, you know, the devil's in the details, as always. Oh, come on up. Oh, you're never gonna reach that microphone.
Hi, Mr. Varma. Stephanie Fable from Strawberry Lane. How are you? I just want to kind of confirm what I understood that you said. So I think you said that you were going to penalize parents if they don't abide by their pickup times. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I feel like it makes sense to penalize them if they're late because you have to keep school open. But penalizing people who want to pick up their child early, that part I'm kind of confused if that's even allowed because they're legally allowed to pick up their kids whenever they want. So how can you penalize them for picking them up early?
It's a good question.
Is that legal?
Sure. They're agreeing to a service based on hours that they're committing to.
But they're also legally allowed to pick up their kids. So you're saying that your regulation would supersede the law?
So I think you're questioning if it's a habitual process or if it's a one-off process.
Well, I mean, either. I mean, it could be a one-off, it could be reoccurring. It depends on, I mean, there's lots of different, that's something for you to kind of, tell us what your intentions are.
If it's a one-off circumstance, what I referred to earlier, we have created a buffer for having one or two situations that may occur. But if we
So
discover
picking up early or later?
both, all circumstances, they have to abide by the agreement of the time frame that they are stipulated to. There are a lot of school operations, not Primrose, not these schools or this school, that have operations from 8 to 5. And then they will have operation from 5 to 7 or in the morning from 6 to 8, which parents pay as an a la carte. It's very similar model what we will be adopting here. If we see a habitual process from a family, we would have to have a conversation that this is not the right thing.
So it'd be just another like income generating line for you.
That parent likely will have to either move to a different school or move to a different set of hours.
Pay the fee.
But not on a
And
habitual
they can just, build that into their budget, right? I mean.
You probably could, and that's where we come in. When we do the driveways,
Yeah, even if that's even legal, right? So, I mean, I don't know.
no,
if
we
it's-
have a right to do the driveway.
I don't know if I'm just saying if it's even legal to be penalized for picking up your child early.
Yeah, well, I think he also mentioned there was a difference in tuition. Right? It'd be different. The tuition will be tiered to when you pick up. And that may be more of an incentive than $1 a minute.
You could think of the penalty less as a per due dollar, more of a prorated to the tuition that they good. And I think you have a good point, and I think there has been analyzed whether or not monetary penalties work, and I think often you see people are just willing to pay it. Not to say that you should have it anyway, and it might be somewhat effective. I think it's going to be among a number of different mechanisms that they're putting in place to get people to agree to it. I'm also just not sure that even with few parents who might take advantage, that means all of a sudden you're going to have this segmented out over the hour and then everyone's just gonna come at the beginning. That seems unrealistic. And I think the post-implementation study that we're putting in place would push their permit in jeopardy. As I said before, is the biggest incentive for them to figure out how to get this to work.
There is the driveway car count. We could judge whether staggering is working.
And I guess I have another kind of follow-up question. Why wouldn't you just get the right amount of students that kind of fit? So you don't have to deal with the staggering, which just lower the counts to 90 instead of 100. I mean, what is the reason for that?
That's 18 months of review.
Does that make financial sense for a
I'm just
business? I mean,
wondering.
let's be realistic. He's trying to run a business and make money. So obviously he knows what his number needs to be to make a profit. I mean, and going back to your point about a parent just habitually being late or picking up early, I don't know that many people that want to be that egregious at the place where their kid goes to school. Like, I think parents, for the most part, are going to be on better behavior. And the ones that aren't are going to feel pretty uncomfortable showing up every day outside of the time that they contracted for. And it, like, there is like people, you know, I feel like you want to assume the worst in everybody that's going there, but I'm hoping that the people that are not respecting the times are going to be on the, you know, on the smaller end and be counseled out of the school if they can't adhere.
I mean, people break rules all the time, just like we were saying earlier about people parking where they shouldn't be parking to, you know, I mean, those are all different.
So
ways
back
of
to
doing
that
it.
too, Strawberry Lane. I don't think it's realistic for people dropping off kids that do not walk on their own to park there. You are 100% right. People do it at Riverview, at Field Point, and at the church on the bottom of Heritage Hill. But those students are all walking on their own. They're older. So I see how lazy people are. At the top of Main Street, there's a parking lot across the street from Broadway. People can use that parking lot, but I think they'd rather circle looking for a spot on Main Street. I don't think parents with young kids are going to park on Strawberry and walk across that. That's the one that doesn't seem as realistic to me.
Yeah, I guess my point was just that, you know, people do break the rules, you know, as you pointed out.
We'll have to be vigilant about the staggering issue, because that's a very good issue you raised. Compliment you on that, because it was a good issue. And, you know, we'll have to talk about that. More curb counts. Yes.
So, addition to the plan of.
Start with your name and address.
Natalia Broida, 93 North Broadway. The plan that you included the cars to do the study, I don't understand why you're not including in the number of these cars the residents. We have like 50 apartments, so there are at least additional 100 cars that people are going to be driving in and out, in addition to students, right? With like these people not going to be magically materialized in the apartment.
To clarify, I did not conduct a traffic study, the applicant's traffic engineer
I understand,
did.
but you
However,
recommended
they
them to
did
conduct
include,
the
they,
study. Can you please include the cars of residents?
they did.
Well, the numbers you mentioned are included on this.
Well, the numbers, the actual traffic study itself has the number of residents.
Do we have any more citizens to? Okay, is it something new? Because you sometimes
Yeah,
reiterate.
this is in connection with the post-implementation.
Okay.
Aspects of this, yes. Oh, sorry.
And I don't know if you said your name enough.
Sure. Anthony Altamura on One Meadowbrook Road. So we've had sort of dueling responses around a whole bunch of projected traffic outcomes. With you know, we've done studies to show certain numbers. They've proposed other numbers. Those are all projections. We get that. Now we're talking about a situation where they go forward and they build this thing, and then we're going to start doing actual counts and gaining actual numbers. And it seems like there's almost an assumption in place now that the minimum that you're starting out with will be workable and acceptable. And if somehow the impacts above that amount are somehow create further failures under our traffic statute and they can't be mitigated, well, they'll just be capped at what you originally started out with. But what if the opposite happens? What if when we start getting actual numbers, we find out that the trip distribution ratio is more like what we had calculated, 40-60 or 36-64, and the traffic generation, the trip generation is greater than what they're projecting today, and it's more like what we're seeing. And if some of these other issues come about, like they can't put all this queued up parking on the driveway because of fire truck issues and other things like that. So what if it turns out that when you look at the actual numbers, they're failing the traffic standards, and they're failing them to the extent that they're unable to mitigate that failure completely. So that we now have a situation where the code says if you're in that scenario, you're not permitted to get a special permit, but here you've already issued the special permit,
which is renewable every year.
Okay, so then you're going to go and you're going to say, okay, you failed, you can't mitigate, we're going to not renew your permit. So then we have a white elephant built up on that hill that's going to impact this village tremendously, because it'll be a big empty shell of a building with multifamily housing there living next to it. Who knows what that's going to create, that type of scenario. That may make that project completely economically unfeasible, and could lead to a bankruptcy. It could lead to all kinds of scenarios where the village they're not able to collect any property taxes or anything else. I mean, it's not unforeseeable that the traffic numbers that are the actual numbers are going to look more like what we've projected than what they've projected. And if that were to happen and they aren't capable of being mitigated, what's going to happen? I mean, I think the answer is obvious. It's a disaster. So that leads me to think that, talking about post-implementation mitigation is a slippery slope, and it could be very dangerous. And it's better to anticipate the worst case scenarios and analyze the traffic and some of these other things under those scenarios to make sure that it works. And if not, make them adjust the scope of what they're doing now, than trying to fix it after the fact when it can't be fixed. We have to be realistic. There comes a point where you just can't stagger children's arrivals and departures or reduce the size of the daycare to a number that it becomes uneconomical, and nobody's going to go and sign up for a $30,000 a year daycare if they're only allowed to come at certain hours, and it won't even work for them if there's if they have to reduce it from 150 to 90 or 80 or something like that. So there's some serious problems with that. That's my major point. The only other thing I want to mention is there's been stated at this few times tonight that there's somehow this 10% wiggle room. Like the code allows for 10% levels of failure. Well, that's just simply wrong. It's not what the code says. We should really look at the code provisions very carefully. There are 3 provisions that are set forth in the traffic section of the code as examples of what a adverse impact would be. 2 of them have to do with level of service. 1 of them has to do with queuing lanes. The first code section dealing with level of service looks at whether or not an intersection that has a passing code grade is going to go to an E or an F, or failing code grade. And if the traffic impact results in that happening, that's an adverse impact, and that has to be mitigated, or you can't give them a permit. The third provision is a queuing one. That has nothing to do with any type of 10% adjustment. It has to do with the length of the cars that are lined up in a turning queue or in a through queue. It's only one of the three that deals with the situation where an intersection is already in an E or F standard, which is already a failure today. If the impact is going to enhance that failure, they're given like a 10% wiggle room there. Like you can live with an additional 10% level of failure if it's already failed. And beyond that, then it's if it gets to 11%, 12%, then they violated that provision. So there is no such thing as like a 10% level traffic failure level that is uniformly allowed. And it'd be important for everybody to sort of look at the code and read it carefully and understand how that works, because that's just flat out wrong. Thank you.
That's why we have a.
Yeah, we have an attorney, but she has not clarified that point once when these misstatements were made over and over again.
Oh, no, Elaine explained how Elaine knows those, they know because they drafted those standards and she's checked it against all three standards, right?
Yeah, we checked it against all three standards.
And you never, by the way, you never asked that question to me before, so don't say I didn't answer it.
Saying that
I
it
would
was
never
never
answer it.
corrected.
It's something for Elaine and Elaine will answer now.
Well, my point was simply that when it was misstated by members of the board as to what the standard was, it was never corrected.
I didn't say it was a standard. What I said was, in a shorthand, that's what the Board of Trustees has determined.
That's
That's
just
a
not right. That's my point. You're saying that the standard is that there's a 10%, in shorthand. That's one test out of three. There are two other tests that are
All
looked
of them
at.
which have been met.
And
I don't need to discuss the ones
They're
which
not.
have been
They
met.
haven't been met. That's the point. But anyway.
So, based on my review of the applicant's traffic study, that all the mitigation standards have been met. The 10% is for the worst case failing scenarios, and we always refer to the 10% because those are the most critical locations that we're looking at. We do meet the 10% rule. We do meet the degradation within A through D rule. We also, in terms of queue mitigations, we are mitigating. The applicant is mitigating the queues back to the no build condition under all cases. So there are no impacts there.
You spoke already. You have something new to offer?
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate your patience. Steve
It's
Maffia.
10:30.
I understand. This will be very quick. Regarding the post-implementation study, just for clarification, it was mentioned that there would be traffic counts and detailed level of service analysis at all of the intersections. Just wanted to know if that includes the additional intersections that were added in the more recent studies south of Main Street, including Station and Harriman and one other.
So in the changes that I'm proposing, it is every single intersection included as part of the traffic impact study, which would include the the intersections that you're referring to.
Okay, thank you. I would request that specific information, that language be included in the post-implemented, so that it's a description, so that there's no confusion as to what the applicant's going to study in the future. Second item is, will they also be looking at the queuing on site during the drop-off and pickup times after they've opened, to either confirm or identify what the queuing is and how that actually operates?
Yes, that will be part of the study. Just doing observations during each of the peak hours and the school dismissal and arrival times.
Okay, thank you. Just I would add that I am anticipating writing a letter to the board that gives more fuller details on my comments on the post-implementation study as it's being proposed right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Peter.
Thank you. Peter McCallick from Strawberry Lane. I just wanted to round out Mr. Varma's answer about the 7 to 7 pre-COVID hours. I think one thing that's lost in all this, I've been to 3 of these locations. They are in zones that are called light industrial, heavy commercial. I think I told you about my experience at the West Orange facility. It's next to the former location of the McDonald's. It's out of Dunkin' Donuts. Got a nail salon, Chinese restaurant, strip malls. Okay. That's part of the reason why they can stay up open until 7 o'clock, is it because that's essentially the equivalent of our Central Avenue. That's where this belongs. The Manhattan Primrose and 82nd Street serves, what, 8 million people? That closes at 6 o'clock p.m. now. So you're telling me that Irvington, a rural village of 6,000 people, has to open up to 7? That's where the character and appearance of the village analysis comes in. Again, just coming back to that, right? That is out of character for this village. In fact, our comprehensive plan, believe it or not, specifically singles out our rural qualities for what needs to be preserved. You cannot square 7 to 7 big box daycare and a rural village. Thank you.
Mr. Varma, do you have anything to say on?
Again, this is post-COVID. Schools have different operations. Manhattan is a whole different operation. We can't even compare Manhattan to the suburbs. We are essentially catering to the board suggestion of a staggered period, essentially to ensure the operations of the school. We would ideally like to operate till 6 p.m., but we understand the board's requirement for the staggering, hence we move the hours.
I
But
think that's a potential problem because of reasonable thoughts were offered on the feasibility of the staggering. So timing and what parents need to do, jobs, pick up now. I don't care, I'm gonna pick them up now, whatever. But I think it's gonna be difficult.
I'm sorry, which portion I lost?
Staggering.
Staggering will be difficult for us or for
you?
No, I think actually, quite honestly, we don't anticipate a problem with this. It's not the ideal situation for us, but we don't anticipate a problem monitoring, adhering, and following the procedure because it will be a simple process for us to put in place with the tuition separation.
We may have to beef up our post-implementation to make sure the staggering is working.
It will certainly be working. We have a lot of ways to control that aspect from even getting into the building aspect. They would not be able to clock into the child's classroom to be able to get in. So we wouldn't have that situation.
Anything else on traffic? Marianne, you had that list of the villages.
Yeah, just not traffic related, just a few things that, because I read through the fiscal impact statement that you submitted. And sorry, let me say that again. I read through the fiscal impact statement, and there were a few things in there that I think need to be elaborated on. One is there was a projection that it would be okay with the police department and IVAC and whatever. But I think we need to hear from the police department and from IVAC and from the fire department, I guess, although Ed's working with the fire department on that. Yeah, he's working on it, but the police department and IVAC, that they can handle the additional population from the buildings and the school kids. And same thing with the school district. The projections, which I think are correct, is that there might be 12 more students in the residential portion. Tim Miller had said he had it, or somebody from his company had spoken with the assistant superintendent who didn't see a problem. We would like to see something in writing for the school district that they can accommodate the extra students. I think you're working on this already, but you have to the water and sewer capacity has to be confirmed by DPW. Oh yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the affordable units and the moderate units are distributed in the same proportion as 1 and 2 bedrooms in the rest of the building, so that there would have to be I guess 6 1-bedroom and 4 2-bedroom. In the affordable 3 1-bedroom and 2 2-bedroom, and in the moderate would also have to be 3 1-bedroom and 2 2-bedroom. So I don't think we saw great. It could be in those plans. I don't know if we saw that, but just show that. And then that's it.
I'm looking at my notes here, I'm sorry. We never did the EAF, right? Or did we?
We went through the EAF to identify what might be issues, but you'll do that when they're all done with. The best way to do it is to say,
we identified the
with
issues.
and
And now
then
that those
with
issues are-
mitigation, can you answer that there's not going to be any impact? So we'll do that shortly before the do the
We never
final
did, we never
resolution.
did site capacity too.
So that's
As far as I know, we never did site.
Site capacity's been done
I think that was done.
a while ago.
I'm not sure of that.
You may not have they did the calculation, you may not have taken any action on it.
Correct.
Right. That's it.
Oh.
But the calculation is
Right.
determined.
I don't know. Getting a little late. I don't know if you want to proceed with whatever you were going to say. I mean, I know you've been working offline on the fire trucks are still an issue, and
Yeah, they're working on it. It's,
and some of the site work,
There's still
building
some
height.
issues. The height's been more or less resolved. Small details.
The sewer line,
But that Doug, in his memo, has addressed a way to move it up to the next step. Spent a lot of time on it with the water departments last week.
they're aware of it.
It's in the memo they received, yes, but. If you have any questions? All Doug, not you.
I had cut you off in the beginning, so let's do the traffic first before you started to make a presentation.
We were hoping at this meeting to be able to go through the plans because it's been a while since we showed.
Well, and do you think they're ready for that?
You watched the Mercy College, what happened?
Yes, I was here.
You want to have that review tonight?
I mean, I'd rather have it in.
I'm ready.
I mean, if there's any,
I-
I'd
I-
rather
I-
know what the issues are.
So, there's a lot of stuff not on the plans because we had meetings, so like vacations just didn't line up. It's nobody's fault. And a lot of the plans don't match each other, and I really don't want. If you want to, we will, but it's not gonna fare well.
And I don't know where you are with drainage, but we mentioned drainage is important. Doug, did you look at that one of the things?
Yeah, I mean, I had looked at some of it earlier, we still have some other.
No, they're moving along, it's just that there's
But the drainage needs work too.
a lot of changes last 3 months. All the pages have been changed.
There was still a little bit of potential coverage for
Coverage,
certain
but there's still
things.
things coming and going that you mentioned the sidewalk tonight. They should allow for that coverage just in case it becomes the issue because I think we're set on having. Well, or something.
As far as drainage too, they had good soil testing. Generally, it's there, I would say.
You know, I think I mentioned the last meeting. Wherever you put the stormwater systems have to be compatible with tree plan. It can't all be in the same place.
And that's where, Your landscape plan isn't older than the latest engineering. That's just a standard comment, actually.
In the,
As you move the roads around, planting plans should change, match whatever the new version of a road is.
right, so we didn't update the landscape plan from
Well,
prior
exactly.
submission. Right.
I'm not criticizing you on that because you don't know.
That's the comments I didn't.
Yeah, if the site plan is finalized, then you can build the landscape around it.
There was a reference to a landscape memo that was supposed to be attached to Mr. Han's. There was a reference to a landscape memo that was attached to your.
Something that, I'm sorry, that would have been for whatever previous landscape memo was. Usually the landscape architect emails me, I put it there.
Okay.
It would be the same one. Is there a reference there or? hold on?
It says, as
Previously mentioned.
comments from the
Okay.
village should be addressed and said attached, but nothing.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, that's just it.
Yeah,
It's
it
just
would be
the
the same
prior-
one.
That was attached to the September one.
Typically the landscape architect gets it to me, but
Mhm.
it's not, it didn't change, so my comment didn't change. It would be the same landscape comments, so. I can get them over to you. They're the same ones that were.
Lori, anything other than traffic?
I was just gonna say, do you feel comfortable that you have an opportunity to work offline on some of the things that you have questions on? For the building department?
Or we've been making progress on the plans and they've been
As far as,
updated and.
as far as offline, I
Okay.
assume the sewer, like those other couple comments, we're gonna have to go.
Back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of
It's
those.
not just one and done.
No, I realize that. I'm just making sure that there's a good
I mean, they're
channel.
gonna need some of the mapping, they're gonna have to go back and forth on that stuff.
Yeah, I was listening to your comments on Mercy, about the I and I
Fire
because,
hydrant's fine, but
okay, so that's good.
there's not much shown on the plan.
Yeah, I just saw, I'm reviewing my notes, Kathy, and one of them we didn't talk about is the I and I.
Right, so,
So it's a similar process, you're.
so the inspection, that's something that our
Let's
consultants.
talk offline, but
Okay.
yeah. If we do it, it's gonna take you longer and cost you more. We'll have our guys work with you to get access. We already opened up all of your manholes as well. We know where they are. We're concerned about one section being too small. As it goes through an old estate. So there might be one section that becomes a big problem, but everything's fixable.
You know, when the building, you settled with Ed on that, what the building is going to be, we would be very interested in what it looks like from Broadway. So, you know, whenever you arrive at.
The plan before.
Yeah, we've seen it.
Average elevation plan wasn't far off.
You know, in terms of, is it brick, is it vinyl?
Of that.
You know, and the shape of the buildings, and a rendering of what it looks like.
I thought you were talking about the view lines.
The view lines, yeah.
And the view lines is what you said.
The view lines, if you're standing on Broadway, what do you see? No.
So do you think at the next meeting, we could be in a position to devote time to those issues? Just where.
Well, what we might do is reverse the order, do the other issues first. We'll see.
Let's see how far we get offline.
See how far you can get with Ed.
And what were the outstanding coverage issues?
There are some walkways that may be needed for the fire. That is a coverage issue. And tonight's walkway discussion might be a coverage issue.
So if this board were to require an additional interior walkway to serve the new crosswalk that will have the hawk signal, is that something that would be considered for the public's benefit?
We talked about it. We talked about areas for that. To allow it for that walkway, specifically for the pedestrian walkway to get to the hawk light.
Okay. Would it be considered the public benefit to be afforded additional coverage?
we didn't get that far in the discussion. We got to the point where the coverage required for such a walk. We thought that it possible variance, we would consider a variance just for that walkway. That would be, now in terms of public benefit, you know, credit for coverage, I don't know. We're gonna give you the coverage anyway, so I don't, it's gonna be out of the rest of it. I don't think it matters.
That's one tiny question.
Yeah.
Identify yourself.
Right. Karen Donahue, Ferris Street. So my question is, with this walkway, does that mean it's gonna break through the brick wall and frontage, corridor?
Yes,
That's too bad.
not in the front, on the side.
On the side, on the.
The
on
idea is
strawberry
that the
lines.
walkway's on the interior of the wall.
And then it would be,
Sorry, Lori, could you say that?
The walkway is on the interior part of their
Along
grounds,
Broadway.
along the wall.
along Strawberry, I'm sorry.
Well, Strawberry's still a street, right?
Inside the wall along Broadway.
The opening would be on Strawberry.
But so far, there's three different.
No, we're all saying the same thing.
Everybody's saying the
Here's
same
Broadway.
thing.
Here's the wall. Here's the walkway.
I was.
So there's
I
two
know.
walls? Okay, so I need to educate
No,
myself.
there's
Sounds
one
like
wall,
there's,
the Broadway wall.
The
The
Broadway
stone
wall.
wall that's there.
On the inside of the Broadway wall
but to get, what's the point of the walkway? Do you need
to
to
get
get
to
out
Strawberry Lane.
not to get out to Broadway? So there's no breaking of the question, the
No,
question.
the
I-
idea is if the hawk signal needs to be at Strawberry Lane, you need a way to walk to Strawberry Lane.
Okay,
It comes down the driveway entrance inside the interior wall and then would open up on Strawberry Lane where the Hawkeye is.
okay, so the Broadway
The
wall
stone
would
wall.
not be broken.
Stone-
That was what I was questioning.
It's not the
Thank you.
Broadway wall for the walkway. It's the
I didn't know
Strawberry-
where the walkway was
Strawberry
going
Lane.
to. I didn't understand
It's
that.
in line, yeah.
Thank you.
And it's been said that there will be a driveway opening, stone wall, which would have to go. We haven't looked at that design yet. That's part of what it looks like.
Quick question.
You have to
Acid
name and
track,
address.
yes, acid track, point to Strawberry Lane. The, simple question, the stone walls along Broadway, in different, parts of it, who that it belongs to, actually, those, you know, those walls? And do they belong to the property owner? Do they belong to the village or, the state? I mean,
They're all, 90% of the stone walls on Broadway are on private property.
so so including this one, which will, so the one that's along Strawberry and the Broadway portion.
I did say Strawberry. I don't know Strawberry. I know Broadway for a fact, 90%.
So this chunk belongs to this property, a maximum property. So there's it's a little bit unrelated, I apologize, but I just don't know who to ask. There's the little chunk of the stone wall next to the little carriage house that's that is falling apart. Who does that belong to?
That belongs to the owner of that building and he's gotten a letter.
We're all, you drive past it all the time.
Yes, I mean, they cut the tree, but it's growing back and it's destroying the. Oh, thank you.
It's been addressed, but they're not addressing it. Okay.
I'm getting ready to close the meeting.
Sorry. One more thing, Paul Kirby, 85 North Broadway. And maybe if somebody could provide me some direction here, but a major concern of ours living across the street with this massive driveways runoff. And with Hurricane Ida, will the drainage be sufficient to stop a Hurricane Ida from flooding Broadway coming into our yard? We've been trying to keep water out of our basement for 7 years now, and I don't think this is going to help matters. So I really want to look into this. I'm not an expert. If I could get maybe some direction or comfort.
Drainage is an issue and they're working on it.
We haven't approved that. You see water all flowing out of the driveway, or you see it mostly shooting out of the corner of Strawberry on that?
I've seen it out of, yeah, it's always out of Strawberry. It was coming, our yard was flooded and it was coming in through our window well.
It won't address the feed flow coming down Strawberry.
Yeah, I'm not across from Strawberry. I'm
No,
across-
no, no,
yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
saying, and it won't address sheet flows coming down both South Broadway and North Broadway.
But from the site.
It only addresses the site.
Okay, yeah, yeah, so you're saying when the Ida hit, it was coming from
Everywhere.
everywhere. And I don't think this is gonna help matters, it just really
Now,
needs.
So one of the things that will help is that, what is it, an 8-inch pipe, 12-inch pipe at Strawberry?
Yeah.
It flows full, goes right.
So that, right now, there is no drainage. System. It all goes down to the wall, comes out of the pipe, goes over. Pipe. That pipe will now just be an overflow. Still working out details to get that put into the system of cost.
Okay, and that'll be
They
part of
they
that
do have to
site
treat the
plan.
100-year storm, so Ida was almost there, but they do have to treat. up to the 100 years.
And right now, there's not.
Yeah. The other issue, which is reasonable, is the sheet flow off the driveway. Trench drain.
And
I don't really remember all the details right now, but they have to collect the driveway for the most part. Yeah.
And that'll be for a 100-year storm too, off the driveway.
Yeah, the driveway, the house, you know, every building.
But don't worry, because Doug will give you his home address.
Yeah.
And you know where to go if you're.
Actually, it's
45
projected,
minutes from here.
it's projected that there'll probably be less water from the property because you retain a lot of the water. Stormwater retention system, detention.
I mean, but we're across from the driveway, there's definitely be more water flowing.
The driveway, yes, that needs to be, he said there'll be some form of drains on the driveway to preclude that because Broadway has enough issues without a new driveway adding to it.
They can't have all the runoff go out to the road.
Okay, yeah, I mean, 100-year storm, because we're getting those more frequently.
Not there.
Thank you. Going once. You have anything further?
Nothing further.
Anything from the board?
Nope.
We neglected the Zoom. Anything on Zoom?
No.
Probably gone to sleep. Hey, meeting is closed and like.